Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian is here today. Ian, I don't know about you, but I woke up today feeling like number one.
Oh, yeah?
Did you wake up today feeling like number one?
I was up there, yeah.
Yeah, you were. There you go. We got a lot of stuff to get into today, by the way. We got the Predators who never, ever, ever lose anymore, and we will be giving away a pair of tickets to tomorrow's game with a code word in this hour, and then we'll be giving them away later on in the program. So we're excited about that. Big win for the Predators on Saturday. The Vols win. Kentucky loses. Calipari, who knows? He's out in purgatory right now. Is he going to stay or is he going to go win again? We got a ton of stuff to get to, but I want to start on the L'Jarius Sneed trade. So Friday night, I was watching TV, and I have Adam Schefter notifications on my phone. Whenever he sends out a tweet, it pops right up.
Still? You still have that set up, huh?
I mean, I'm glad I did, because not only did I learn about the L'Jarius Sneed trade on Friday night, I also learned about Dusty May being named Michigan's next basketball coach when it was pretty locked up that he was going to be the Louisville coach. And so now we hope Dusty May fails and gets fired at Michigan, but that's a different discussion for a different day. So, yes, I still have the Adam Schefter notifications. I got a notification. The Titans are acquiring L'Jarius Sneed. And I said, oh, my God. And then I saw for a 2025 third-round pick and a seventh-round pick swap. And then I thought the most important thing in the Adam Schefter tweet was the Sneed's agreed to a contract that will make him one of the highest-paid corners in NFL history, not the highest-paid corner in NFL history, which was his want. And so there had been a lot of smoke about L'Jarius Sneed. There had been a lot of smoke about the Titans and L'Jarius Sneed. On Thursday's show, I was off Friday. On Thursday's show, I told you guys, I said, I think that the Titans are very much involved on L'Jarius Sneed. I don't care what the Titans are telling people. And it was clear with PK and TD saying, hey, they were in, but they're out. It was clear that the Titans were telling people they were out, probably because they were waiting for somebody, whether it was the Chiefs or Sneed's asking price to go down. And I guess it probably did a little bit, and now the Titans have L'Jarius Sneed. And everybody wanted to throw a parade. Oh, my God, Jared, we stole him. We stole L'Jarius Sneed for a 2025 third-round pick. Now, I wasn't born yesterday. And I remember the great old GM Floyd Reese, Titans Hall of Famer, and, of course, our friend and mentor and buddy and, sage that he was to all of us, had an old saying about the NFL, in which he said that a guy's only available for one of four reasons. 1, bad player. 2, bad guy. 3, too much money. 4, injured. One of those four reasons. That's why you can't go get Patrick Mahomes, or you can't go get Nick Bosa or Myles Garrett. Because even though Myles Garrett costs a fortune, he's worth the money that he costs, and so he's not too much money. He's not injured. He's not a bad guy. I mean, he did hit Mason Rudolph over the head with a helmet, but other than that, not a bad guy. And obviously he's a good player. So when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed, I know L'Jarius Sneed's not a bad player. I know that. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed is as locked down as a lockdown corner as you can get. He can lock down the best wide receivers in the NFL. So I know he's not a bad player. Number 2, I don't think he's a bad guy. I've never seen or heard anything. I can't remember anybody saying anything reported that, L'Jarius Sneed's in trouble. I mean, I lived through Pac-Man Jones on the Titans. I know what trouble is. I know what Floyd means when he says, quote-unquote, bad guy. L'Jarius Sneed does not check those boxes. And then that leaves 3 and 4. Too much money or injured. Now, I don't really care about the too much money because if you're the Titans, you have to overpay to get good players. You're the Titans. That doesn't bother me. And you also know that I think the cap's fake. And then that takes me to 4. I'm worried that the reason why Kansas City let L'Jarius Sneed, a great player, go for a 2025 third-round pick is because Kansas City didn't trust his knees. It'd be one thing if the Titans traded a 2024 second-round pick for L'Jarius Sneed. It'd be another thing if they traded a 2025 first-round pick for L'Jarius Sneed. But it's not. It's a third-round pick in next year's draft. And the math of these trades is if it's a third-round pick in next year's draft, it really counts as a fourth-round pick. So essentially for a fourth-round pick, and there is no value in a seventh-round pick swap. So for a fourth-round pick, and then the seventh pick swap, the Titans just landed who Chad Ochocinco called one of the three best cover corners in the NFL at 27 years old. Something's not right here. Something does not add up. I know there are plenty of teams around the NFL that would pay good money to have one of the best corners in the league. So I know when the Kansas City Chiefs made it obvious that they were taking L'Jarius Sneed to the trade market the same way Cincinnati has made it obvious that they are taking T. Higgins to the trade market, everybody had a shot to call up Kansas City to see what it would cost. Everybody had a shot to talk to L'Jarius Sneed about how much money it would cost. And yet nobody offered more than a 2025 third-round pick, which again leads me to the knees. Now, I have no idea how bad L'Jarius Sneed's knees are. I've never met him. I'm not an orthopedic surgeon, and I am certainly not a member of the Chiefs' medical staff. But we've been down this road before. We went down it with Julio Jones and his hamstrings. I remember I talked to a league source who said that the NFL, well, I shouldn't say the NFL, their team, this league source's team doctors laughed at the Titans when they made the trade for Julio Jones because they knew the hamstring was so bad. We've been down this road before with Caleb Farley. Remember the back injury, the extra surgery, the other injury, the hadn't played football, but you guys, just watch. Just watch. It'll be okay. It'll be okay, Jared. And considering that the Chiefs were basically willing to let L'Jarius Sneed go for free, it makes me nervous. It makes me really nervous. This is too good to be true. And a lot of you are going to get mad at me for saying that. I already know. Oh, Jared, you have to rain on the parade. Oh, Jared, here you go. Oh, I'm sorry, but if you got Joe Burrow for a second-round pick, wouldn't you be skeptical too? If you saw somebody advertising a Lamborghini for $25,000, wouldn't you think that's probably a scam? I mean, I'm sorry. This just seems too good to be true. Now, if it is that nobody else in the NFL wanted to pay L'Jarius Sneed $19 million a year, I don't have a problem with that. Because, again, that's their money, not mine. Cap's fake. But if those knees are bad, we got problems. And I'm going to tell you why. The number one reason, and I'm not a huge believer in the cornerback position. I think the pass rush is more important than the back end. A good pass rush, I think, makes an average back end look good, but I don't think a good back end can help an average pass rush. But again, I know you can't have Trey Avery out there on the football field. Trey Avery on 300 snaps last year gave up 6 touchdowns. You can't have that. But if you bring in L'Jarius Sneed for $19 million, which is roughly 8% of a $250 million payroll, and those knees are bad, guess what happens? Trey Avery goes back out onto the football field. And again, no disrespect to Trey Avery, but I don't want Trey Avery on the field. McCreary, good player, reliable player. I like him. Awuzie, good player, reliable player. His one injury was an ACL. He played better at the end of last year. I like him. L'Jarius Sneed, great player. He only went for a 2025 third-round pick. So if you're telling me that I'm getting L'Jarius Sneed for $19 million in a third next year, and I get the L'Jarius Sneed of last season, plays every game, I don't give a rat's ass how much he practices. He plays every game, and he goes out, and hey, you've got Michael Pittman Jr. this week. Next week, you've got Christian Kirk. The next week after that, you've got Tank Dell or Nico Collins. Go lock them up. Let's make C.J. Stroud throw the ball to somebody else. If I'm getting the L'Jarius Sneed of last year for the next 3 years, because it's basically a 3-year guaranteed contract, and then the 4th year we'll see, then hallelujah, what a deal. It'll be as good as the 4th-round pick swap for DeMarco Murray in 2016. But Kansas City won a Super Bowl last year by the smallest of margins, second ever Super Bowl to go to overtime, and they gave up points before they got the ball in that overtime. And they just gave away one of their 4 best players for a pick that they can't even use this upcoming season. Are you not skeptical? I am. If it's all about the money and no other team in the NFL wanted to pay L'Jarius Sneed that kind of money, fine. Great. Hallelujah. Put him at corner with him and Awuzie and McCreary in the slot. As long as you can find a way to replace Autry's 10 sacks and you can get after the quarterback, you got a great secondary. But again, nobody just gives away good players for free. And so I just wonder if this might be too good to be true. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We're starting on that. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Now, the Sneed deal is not done. And I think there is a specific reason why the Sneed deal is not done. And it has to do with the physical. Now, I don't think the physical itself is going to be a problem, as in I don't think he's going to fail the physical, and then the Titans are going to have to send him back to Kansas City. But I think there is an I that is not dotted and a T that is not crossed, and we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Boy, I would tell you to I'd tell you what picks to make, but I had Wisconsin in the Final Four. They lost the first round, so who knows. Although my championship game, Illinois-Tennessee, still alive by the skin of Tennessee's teeth. But again, that's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, and you can even pick who's going to cut down the nets. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM and bet on college hoops until they cut down those nets. 21 and over in President Tennessee. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after a seat. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
What made L'Jarius Sneed an attractive trade target, and how does he impact your secondary?
Yeah, I'm going to have to ease up on that one until everything's officially done. But there'll be a time and a place to talk about all that. Just excited about the player that he is. But as far as any kind of official commentary, we'll wait till it's all signed and sealed.
Tampering! Brian Callahan said that he's excited about the kind of player he is. L'Jarius Sneed is not officially a Titan. Kidding. By the way, that was from our friends at SiriusXM NFL Radio for sending us that Brian Callahan audio today at the owners' meetings. And so the Sneed deal is not done yet. It was agreed to on Friday. They went all day Saturday, all day Sunday, Monday. And the Sneed deal is still not done. You want to know why the Sneed deal is not done? Because L'Jarius Sneed's physical is a very important aspect of this. Carrington Harrison last week on Kansas City Radio 610 said, hey, word on the street, and again, this is coming from the Chiefs since it's in Kansas City, word on the street is that those knees for L'Jarius Sneed are not very good.
And I will say that I didn't maybe know this and didn't view it through this lens really until this weekend when I started talking to people. His knee is a far bigger issue than people know that it is. Far bigger issue than people think. That's why if it was me and I was advising L'Jarius Sneed, if he came to me and was like, what should I do? Take the money. It might not be all you want, but take the money. And there have been really strong offers on the table for L'Jarius Sneed that he has turned down in his desire to be the highest paid corner in the National Football League. I know he hasn't missed a significant amount of time with the knee injury. His knees are in worse shape than you think they are. They're like, oh, no, it's not that bad. It's bad.
Okay. So, again, that's probably coming from the Chiefs. And this physical is a very important physical. Now, I like the Titans doctors because I know some of them. I think they're good dudes. But, again, business is business, and their recent track record, we've already gone over Julio Jones and Caleb Farley today, leaves me questioning sometimes the ability to evaluate some of these medical situations properly. But let me say this. If these knees are bad, which it sounds like, again, Carrington said, oh, no, it's that bad, the Titans need to squash this deal. Like, if the knees are that bad, they need to say, no. But that's probably not going to happen. According to the media reports, and this is very important that you hear me out when I say media reports, because the media reports, Ian, when somebody gets a new contract, where do the media reports usually come from?
Agents, I think.
The agent. So this is all going to be L'Jarius Sneed's side of the story here. But the media report said $55 million guaranteed. On a $76 million contract, that's the first 3 years. So you're telling me with these bad knees that Carrington Harrison's talking about, you're going to guarantee $55 million over 3 years? Then those knees better be able to hold up. Because you can buy a lot of players for that $19 million. The thing is, though, is I don't think the physical is going to be the holdup here in terms of whether or not Sneed gets traded to the Titans, even if the knees are bad. Because the Titans have an ace in the hole that I learned about this weekend. And you're not going to hear about this from the media reports. And I'm not Kim Mulkey. I'm not up here telling you that the media is a bunch of liars. I'm just telling you that when it comes to reporting on contracts and things like that, that the only things that get out are the things that people want you to know. And this is very important. This is the ace in the hole that I think the Titans need to insist on. And that is, if these doctors see anything with these knees, the Titans need to insist on a waiver on the guarantee. I learned about this weekend. I was talking to some agents about what do you do if the physical shows that the knees are bad. And what the Titans can do is they can guarantee L'Jarius Sneed the 3 years, but not the knees. If the knees are an issue, you have a waiver, it voids the guaranteed money, and then you move on. Now, again, because the agents are the ones who are doing the reporting, we'll never know if the Titans end up agreeing to a waiver on Sneed's knees if the doctors during the physical feel like Sneed needs it. But I was told by somebody who knows this stuff that Vin Marino of the Titans is an expert in how to manage this type of situation with that kind of waiver. And I'm going to say this. The Titans absolutely have to take this seriously when it comes to the physical and a potential waiver on the knees, because let's not kid ourselves. Something is wrong here if the rest of the league isn't interested in anything more than a third-round pick next year. Again, you're getting a 27-year-old L'Jarius Sneed for less than you got a 31-year-old Julio Jones. Something's not adding up here. The rest of the league didn't want Sneed. So here's how the waiver works, right? Again, let's say that Sneed comes in town, flies in town for the physical. And again, he's getting $19 million a year, $55 million guaranteed on a $76 million contract, whatever. Sneed comes in and they do the physical. And the doctors look at those knees and they see, tendinitis. They see, again, whatever doctors see that would lead the Titans to believe these knees are so bad that it's going to be a huge risk to guarantee 3 years. Again, the Chiefs just gave away a good player. There has to be some sort of reason for this. So what you do is you basically tell L'Jarius Sneed, you renegotiate. Instead of, hey, $19 million a season, $55 million guaranteed, what we'll do is we'll guarantee you $55 million except for the knees. We get a waiver on the knees. And then if the knees are bad, after a year, we cut you. And he's not going to want to do that. But he doesn't really have a choice, does he? We've already seen what the market is. The market is a third-round pick in next year's draft. We already know he wanted to be the highest-paid corner in the league. That wasn't going to happen. And if he has to go back to Kansas City because they can't execute the trade because the Titans doctors looked at those knees and they were, then what's that going to do to his market value? Again, he's $19 million right now if the knees hold up. So that's the ace in the hole the Titans have. If the Titans have to send him back to Kansas City because he fails a physical, L'Jarius Sneed will be lucky. The Chiefs will be lucky to get a 5th-round pick in next year's draft, and L'Jarius Sneed will be lucky to get a 1-year, $15 million contract. That's not a risk he wants to take. So that's why I think this deal's not finalized, and this is, again, the ace in the hole the Titans have, and this will tell us if this front office is smart. Anybody can say, yeah, trade a 3rd-round pick next year for the 3rd-best corner in the NFL. Yes, do it. But it's little stuff like this that if you make the move on L'Jarius Sneed and those knees are bad and you guarantee those 3 years and he turns into David Givens, you're in trouble. Because, again, ownership, and you got to give them credit because they're spending the money, ownership's got a budget here. So you guarantee $19 million each of the next 2 years in some shape or form, and you're stuck with it because your doctor screwed you up again on the Farley thing or the Jones thing, whatever. I mean, that's really going to hurt your spending power next year to go out and replace the corner that you don't have, and you're going to lose football games because if the knees are bad, Trey Avery's going to be on the football field. So just keep that in mind. That's going to be the thing I'm looking for, is I think this is going to take a couple of days here before they get the Sneed thing done, and I think there's going to be a little bit of a negotiation on, hey, we want a waiver on these knees. Because nobody's guaranteeing 3 years on those knees if those knees are that bad. And here's the other thing. If the knees weren't bad, don't you think Kansas City would have tried to extend him? Like, really would have tried. They didn't even try to extend him. They franchise tagged him, and then they immediately told everybody we're going to try to trade him. And then the report came out of, oh, well, we can let him play on the tag this year. We'll be okay with that, which was, the translation was, guys, we're serious. We're not interested in signing him to a deal. Just trust me. Please trade for him. Something's not right here. 615-737-1025. I promised your phones. We'll get to your phones. There is one thing, though, on why Kansas City was willing to let go of Sneed that I do think is non-knee related. We'll touch on that, and then we're to your phones. Stillman and Company. Again, we're giving away Preds tickets this hour, so be listening for your opportunity. Excuse me. We're giving them away later today in the show. We're giving away the code word that you have to have in order to win them later in the show. My apologies. So be listening for your opportunity on those. Boy, we got a lot of good things going on right here. Score big this spring with Lee Company and the Nashville Predators in the 10K Power Play giveaway. Enter for a chance to win a Kohler home generator or $10,000 towards Lee Company Home Services. A Kohler home generator or $10,000 towards Lee Company Home Services. Go online, leecompany.com/giveaway to enter. That's leecompany.com/giveaway in the $10,000 Power Play giveaway. Contest entries are accepted until Saturday, April 20th. Lee Company, all you need. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
just hard to believe a player that played at such a high level last year only merited a third-round pick. It just seems like somebody would say, I need that, I want that, at least a 2, if not a 1. If you told me that you got a 1 for L'Jarius Sneed, I'd say, good for you. That works.
Yeah, but that 1 plus that, I don't know what he's going to get, $90 million or whatever it's going to be, that's a big number.
He's 27 years old.
It's young.
He was originally a 4th-round pick, to your point, out of Louisiana Tech, and he's played 4 seasons. So he should be entering his prime as a corner. And I'll never forget the first thing Jimmy Johnson told me when I met him in 1989 was, he's a defensive coach, as you know, you win with the guy who can rush the passer and the guy who can cover the pass, with your defensive end and your cornerback. You have to have them or you can't play defense.
You have Skip Bayless this morning saying, like, wait a minute, if you told me a first-round pick, okay, but a 3rd next year? So, again, the focus here is the knee with L'Jarius Sneed, or the knees. But I do feel like as we talk about Sneed and why the Chiefs let him go for what they let him go for, we know that a lot of this has to do with the money. And I have a hard time believing that Kansas City, with their F- owner, according to the NFLPA survey, my gut is Kansas City probably said, hey, we can pay one of the 2 defensive players. We can either pay Sneed or we can pay Jones. And so they decided, we'll tag Sneed, and then that way, if we get a deal done with Jones, good. If not, then we have Sneed. And then if we do get the deal done with Jones, then we can trade Sneed. And I'm guessing that's what happened there. So while I am talking all about the knees and everything else, I do think that it's important to note that the Chiefs probably approached this offseason saying, we're going to lose one of the 2. We'd rather have Jones, which, no offense, I'd rather have Jones too. We'd rather have Jones, but if we lose Jones, then we keep Sneed. And if we keep Jones, then we get rid of Sneed. And that's probably what happened. And I saw that Andy Reid told Kaharski at the owners' meetings that, oh, yeah, with the cap, it's just too hard to be able to keep these guys. And somebody tweeted me and said, somebody needs to send that to Jared Stillman. I'm like, if it was a cap problem, it would have happened before the league year started. It's not a cap problem. It's a money problem. Because the salary cap, that matters if you think it matters, which it does not. But if you think it matters, that matters today. But the actual money, that matters during the season when you start paying that out. And so I could see that owner saying, we can only afford one of these guys. And that's how you get an F-. Between that and trading away Tyreek Hill and paying Travis Kelce $14 million a year when Travis Kelce's probably worth, what, 26 a year, if I had to guess? That's how you do that. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com at 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. One texter says, Jared, where did all the knee stuff come from on Sneed? Didn't he play at a very high level last year? Correct, he did. But as I read over the weekend, L'Jarius Sneed's knee injuries started at the end of the 2022 season. Apparently in the playoffs, he was consistently listed as a limited participant with a knee injury. Now, Sneed didn't miss any games. He did get concussed in the AFC title game, but he played in the Super Bowl. And then, last offseason, he showed up to minicamp, but he was held out because of knee swelling. And they figured at the time, or at least they said publicly, oh, it's just temporary. He just needs some rest. He'll be okay. So they rested the knees, and he didn't participate supposedly in the minicamp or the offseason program or whatever. And then when he got to training camp, he practiced for the first week. And then after the first week, they held him out the rest of training camp. So he practiced for 1 week. Then he had the problem with the knee swelling, which came back, which means this is a recurring issue that's not going away. My gut tells me Sneed guts it out there with those knees. And again, that goes back to Carrington Harrison saying, people are saying, oh, it's not that bad. And Carrington said, oh, no. Trust me. It is that bad. Like, that I think is worth noting. One texter says, Jared, we are not getting Sneed for less than Julio Jones. We are paying him way more. What we gave up in trades is irrelevant because the Chiefs think they can go get his production out of a young guy in the draft. Quit making up the silly stuff. The Titans only paid Julio Jones $1.3 million in 2021. I'm pretty sure the Titans paid more in 2021 for Julio Jones because I remember that they redid his contract. And when you redo somebody's contract, what that means is you pay them the money up front. So his base salary might have been 1.3, but they definitely paid Julio Jones more cash than 1.3. You gave up less for Sneed because you gave up a third-round pick in next year's draft, whereas when you traded for Julio, you gave up a 2 and a 4. Like a 2 and a 4, those are real picks. A third in next year's draft. Again, a third in next year's draft is really a fourth. So when the Titans gave up a 2 and then a fourth in the next year's draft is really a 2 and a 5, and a 2 and a 5 is more than a 3. So no, you gave up less for L'Jarius Sneed than you did for Julio Jones. That's reality. The picks matter. The cash matters. The cap does not matter. And again, cash is determined by what your owner's willing to spend. One texter says, in 2023, Sneed played 1,260 snaps, including playoffs, which was the second most. His knee is fine, says the texter. Ian, did you hear that?
It's fine.
Texter says it's fine. So if the texter says it's fine, then we all have to agree that what Carrington Harrison in Kansas City says is not true. We need to just totally forget about the knee swelling in minicamp and training camp, and we need to guys, A.J. Brown had bad knees, and A.J. Brown went for a $100 million contract, a first-round pick, and a third-round pick in that day's draft. Now, I know A.J. Brown is a great player, and yes, I value wide receiver more than I value corner. But the difference between A.J. Brown and L'Jarius Sneed is not a first-round pick. Because, again, that's what they gave. A first-round pick, a third-round pick, and a $100 million contract for A.J. with bad knees. How many teams in the league? Let's say L'Jarius Sneed was as healthy as a whistle, which we know that most experienced players in the NFL are not. But let's say that L'Jarius Sneed was healthy through and through. You think he goes for a third in next year's draft? You don't think there's another one of these teams out there that's willing to pay $19 million a year for him? A lockdown corner that you can put on a number one receiver? So you can tell me all about what he did do. See, that's the thing about understanding like what you do in free agency and contracts and things like that. You're not paying for what he did last year. You're paying for what he will do. Only an idiot pays for what he did last year. That's what the Angels did when they gave a 30-something-year-old Albert Pujols a $10 million contract, or excuse me, a 10-year contract was, oh, he's Albert Pujols. Let's give him a 10-year contract. And then shockingly, at 42, Albert wasn't as good as he was at 32. So the question isn't about what Sneed did last year. The question is, if those knees are bad and that swelling doesn't go down, and that seems to be a continuous issue, so much so that Kansas City's like, hey, man, we want to trade him because, it's just a long-term thing here. Tim says, so let me get this straight. Jared moans and cries about all the big moves the Texans made, and then when the Titans make some big moves of their own, he poo-poos it. No. I told you. If you're getting L'Jarius Sneed, like the L'Jarius Sneed of the last 2 years, and all you gave up was a third-round pick in next year's draft, that is fabulous. I mean, that is awesome. Like, that is fabulous. But the Chiefs the Chiefs aren't a bad franchise, right? It's like Corey Curtis says it all the time. You don't get better by giving away good players. And Sneed's a good player. And yeah, they gave away Tyreek Hill. But when they gave away Tyreek Hill, they got a crap load of draft picks in return. This is a third next year. Again, something's not adding up here. And you guys, some of you guys in the text line are just afraid to admit it. You're afraid to say, wait a minute. A third-round pick next year for a guy who is a top-of-the-league corner. I mean, what are we doing here? LD says, do you think Rand Carthon cares about his knees? He just drafted a running back last year with no ACL in either knee. Yeah, I do. I do. I think that, again, I believe that And another person, by the way, texted in about Spears, and I'll get to my thought on Spears in a second. But I really believe that when it comes to the Titans and it comes to L'Jarius Sneed and it comes to the knees, and you guys say, oh, do you think Rand cares because he didn't care about Tajay Spears? I mean, if you miss on this, you get fired. Like, this is the kind of move that gets you fired because it's the owner's money. And so you just told the owner, give me $50 million, and you need $50 million today. Because once you sign him, even though you pay it over time, that money goes to the league office in New York, and it stays in escrow, that guaranteed money. So, I mean, he needs $50 million. You go to the owner, and you say, I need $50 million. And then the knees don't work out, that gets you in trouble. Again, another texter texting about Tajay Spears saying, well, he's playing without his ACLs, and I think Sneed is good, and I think Spears is, again, I don't know what the issue with Sneed's knees are other than the swelling. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an orthopedic guy. I'm not any of that stuff. But, again, the Pro Football Doc said when the Titans drafted Spears that, hey, the thing about this kid with his knee is that he's going to be good, but it's only going to be for a limited time. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the doctor said, not me. Well, that's okay for a running back on a rookie contract. And you notice they're paying Tony Pollard real money to come in here and play football. I mean, they didn't go out and get Deontay Foreman to pair with Spears and pay him the league minimum. I mean, they're paying real money to paying Tony Pollard. So what they're saying is we can't give Spears a full workload. Sneed has to play every play. The other thing is one guy's injury, unless it's the exact same injury, is not the same as somebody else. I even tweeted about this today because I was thinking about it. I remember when the Titans drafted Caleb Farley, and I thought, what in the hell are they doing? And people said, well, it worked out with Jeffrey Simmons. And I'm like, yes. A guy tearing an ACL is the same as a guy who's had multiple back surgeries. And you know it's not the same. You just wanted to believe that. So that's what you're telling yourself now. Again, there's a chance that he can do for 3 years what he did last year, which was deal with the knee swelling and then just show up and play. But I think the Titans just need to get a waiver. That's all you got to do. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I mean, texter says, I don't understand. He played 15 games each of the last 2 seasons. What history do we have that he's injury prone? Now, Steve McNair played all those games too. It doesn't mean that Steve McNair was completely healthy when he played them. And that's the thing about the rookie contracts is oftentimes it's, hey, let's use him up on the rookie contract and then let somebody else pay him. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. How about them Predators? I mean, we got to talk about the game Saturday. They never lose. Plus, the keyword for the tickets for tomorrow night, which you can win later. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
A shot by Gostisbehere stopped. Saros got the save. 6 seconds to go. The puck flipped out. It goes rolling toward the empty net, but time will run out. And the Predators win a 1-0 classic against Detroit to go 15-0-2 in their last 17 games.
The Nashville Predators have not lost in regulation since Jared Stillman joined the team on the trip to St. Louis. I'd like that for the record, Ian.
Okay.
So they win again on Saturday, and I got to tell you, I couldn't go to the game. Our family friends went with my tickets, and they had a great time, but I couldn't go to the game on Saturday. I was on Sirius XM, and I had it on my iPad as I was hosting Sirius XM and sitting there and bitching about Calipari. And so I'm watching the game on my iPad, and at one point on the Sirius broadcast, they were about to drop the puck, and I did a read for NHL Network Radio, and I was like, and right now the Predators, by the way, are in the midst of a 16-game point streak, and this team never loses anymore, and they're about a minute away, because I clearly was not focused on what I was supposed to do. But this team doesn't lose anymore. I mean, I was out Friday, so I didn't get to talk about Thursday night's game against Florida, but they just keep kicking the crap out of these playoff teams. I mean, this entire run, they've lost to Minnesota in overtime with one of the gutsiest calls from John Hynes, of all people, and Montreal in overtime, who stinks. On this run that they've been on, Vegas playoff team beat them. LA playoff team beat them. Colorado playoff team beat them. Winnipeg playoff team beat them. Florida playoff team maybe going to win the President's Trophy, beat them. Shut them out with your backup goaltender. And then last night, or Saturday, I should say, Detroit playoff team beat them. Guys, the Nashville Predators are a Stanley Cup contender. That's what Thursday night proved. Thursday night proved that if there was any thought as to whether or not could this team win the Cup, the answer is yes. Now, does it mean they're going to win the Cup? Absolutely not. These hockey playoffs, it's like March Madness. You know, there's no way. I mean, yeah, okay, let's fill out the brackets. Everybody's wrong. But when it comes to can you do it, the answer is yes. The answer is unequivocally yes. Because every game you go into against a good team, you win. It's as simple as that. And there are some fans out there, and I don't get this. There are Predators fans out there that when I say, hey, you're a Stanley Cup contender, they're like, I'm not ready to go that far, Jared. I'm like, then you're not going to believe that this team can compete until you see them put the cup over their head. And that's no way to live. The NHL every year has 16 teams that make the playoffs. Of the 16 teams that make it, 13 to 14 are usually cup contenders. You are one of those teams. New York's a cup contender. Boston's a cup contender. Florida's a cup contender. Colorado's a cup contender. Vancouver's a cup contender. The Dallas Stars are a cup contender. You're a cup contender. Ian, did I leave anybody out in the East?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's 8. You're one of the 8 best. I mean, and if you're afraid to just sit there and look at your hockey team and say, hey, this team's good enough to win the cup, then you haven't been watching hockey for the last month and a half. And at some point, it's not a hot streak anymore. At some point, it's reality. And that's, again, Saturday night proved it. Detroit needed that game, by the way. Like, Detroit needs it because they're right there on that cut line. You didn't. And they played like they needed it. And you still won. Get great goaltending. Get great play from your star players. We obviously know the coach is good. This team is every bit a cup contender. So now I'm going to tell you what our keyword is going to be for you to win the tickets later on in today's show for tomorrow night's game. And this goes back to Jared versus Joe, or it wasn't Jared versus Joe. This was my appearance on Friday on the Robbie and Rex Road program, where I didn't think Oakland could beat UK, and I got on all the basketball bennies, and I apologized to Joe, who very much is a basketball benny. But Joe will not apologize for what is now obvious, that everybody that over the years defended John Hynes, every single one of you that thought, oh no, it's not the coach's fault, you guys were wrong, and me and all the fans were right. And this is what happened on Friday on Robbie and Rex Road. I apologize to you, Joe, because I'm man enough to be able to admit that I was wrong about Oakland after one media timeout last night. All I ask for you to do is the same and admit that you were wrong about John Hynes and I was right, and this is an example of that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not apologizing, but how's your bracket doing?
Joe, why are you not apologizing?
Dude, I can't even, we don't have time to go back and forth on this. You apologize because you fly off the handle and have to tweet something after 2 seconds of a game. So good for you for apologizing for it, because that's what you do. You overreact to everything.
But you won't apologize for your years of John Hynes defending. So Robbie, I don't want to articulate your own opinion for you, but
okay.
I do feel like you remember vividly, whether it was Joe or Hal or Chris or whoever, you remember the finger wagging and the pointing down to me specifically about the coach. And I do
remember.
And I think going back to that, I think you're on my side on this.
I'm Team Jared. Joe, how do we feel?
Team Jared on what exactly?
Team Jared on Joe needs to apologize.
Joe, you must apologize.
Oh, I'm not apologizing.
Okay. Our keyword to win the tickets later in the show when I tell you to call in is apology. That's right. Because all the people like me and you, all the fans that wanted a coaching change in 2022, and we were told by Hal Gill and Chris Mason and Joe Rexrode that we didn't know what we were talking about, we deserve an apology from Joe. And that's our keyword. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. So on the L'Jarius Sneed front, I think L'Jarius Sneed's a great player. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. There is a nugget before I get to my Titans take. There is a nugget here. Apparently, the John Calipari show will be on tonight at 5 o'clock, wherever, I guess, whatever channels have UK. There's not a UK affiliate here. But whatever channels in Kentucky have UK, they have the coaches show. And apparently Calipari, Ian, will be doing his coaches show. It has been announced by 840 WHAS in Louisville, Kentucky.
Well,
so
maybe something to read into there.
Maybe something. Coach Calipari's show. He gets paid to do that show. He has to do that show. And so
maybe he's already been paid for it.
Well, you can't already be paid for it. His payments come, in equal installments or whatever, and part of the deal is, hey, you're going to do the coach's show. You think Mike Vrabel wanted to do all those TV shows with Mike Keith or take people's phone calls? No. But they get paid to do it because then the team or the school, they get paid by the flagship station or whatever it is in order to air the coach's show. So Calipari's got to do it. So I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on L'Jarius Sneed, and a lot of people are going to say that because I think L'Jarius Sneed is a great player. And if he's healthy, if he's the L'Jarius Sneed that he's been for the last 2 years on the football field every Sunday, I don't care if he practices once or not at all. L'Jarius Sneed is a legitimate lockdown corner. But this is not how I would build my team. And I am concerned about that. On Saturday morning, Friday night, people are like, what do you think now, Jared? What do you think of Rand Carthon now? And I'm like, look, the Titans paid the most for a player. That's what happened. If he's saying, what about the owner now? Because a lot of you all have accused her of being cheap over the years. I challenged them to spend the money, and they have. But as far as celebrating anything, because you got L'Jarius Sneed when nobody else apparently was willing to do what you wanted to do, it's not like Kansas City said, we want him to go to the Titans. It was who's going to pay the most? The Titans. But this is not how I would build my team. Because what the Titans have done is they're building this on the back end, right? They're paying a lot of money to Chidobe Awuzie. They're paying a lot of money now to L'Jarius Sneed. Roger McCreary was a high draft choice. They've kept Amani Hooker at his $6.5 million salary, which is notable because that's what guys like Kevin Byard and Tyrann Mathieu and guys that are more accomplished and quite frankly are probably better than Amani Hooker, that's what they're making. And who knows about that other safety spot? They've had interest reportedly in Justin Simmons. They brought in Marcus May for a visit. So keep that in mind. But the Titans have holes on defense. The Titans have a giant, humongous gap right now in the 11.5 sacks from Danico Autry and the consistency of Danico Autry that have walked out the door and gone to Houston. And again, if I'm building a team, I'm building it up front on defense before I'm building it in the back. The Titans also right now don't have a where's the green dot calls the defense inside backer. They have a guy in Kenneth Murray who Pro Football Focus says freaking stunk all 4 years that he was with the Chargers, and the Chargers didn't pick up his fifth-year option. That's all they have right now. That and slow man Jack Gibbons. That's it that they have an inside backer. That's not good enough. And I think this goes back to a theory that I had years ago, and people got mad. And that is, I said, I will not take a cornerback high in the draft unless it is Deion Sanders. But I'm not going to take a corner in the first round of the draft, again, if he's not Champ Bailey or Sauce Gardner or, in this case, L'Jarius Sneed type player. Because I, again, think that you win up front before it is that you win in the back. And I'd look at it like this. I believe that a great pass rush can make an average secondary good. And you can get by with that. I remember 3 years ago in 2021 when the Titans went on that heater and they beat all those teams. They beat Kansas City, they beat Buffalo, they beat the Rams. And I remember in that heater there was a game at home against Kansas City in which on the first drive on a third down, Mahomes got strip sacked by Bud Dupree. And I was like, oh, my God, if Bud Dupree's going to start getting to the quarterback, things around here are going to be different. Because the Titans in 2020 didn't get to the quarterback, and early in 2021, they weren't doing a good job of getting to the quarterback either. But if they're going to start getting to the quarterback, then, you're going to have problems. And the Titans had some injuries in the secondary that week, and Greg Maben was starting at corner. And Greg Maben was a Scarbini borderline practice squad 53rd man type guy who got a lot of run over the years because the Titans have had so many injuries in the secondary that he was starting in the game at corner. And I remember sitting in my seats in that 2021 game, and there was a play where I was looking at Tyreek Hill, and I looked down the field, and Tyreek Hill is running wide open. And me, having been to, at this point, a handful of Patrick Mahomes games in my life, I am just waiting for the ball to go out on a line right to Tyreek Hill for an 87-yard touchdown. Instead, I turn back, and Mahomes is running away from the rush, and he looks like a basketball player who's trying to avoid a double team, is trying to cross over. Like, he's looking right at the guys coming at him, and he can't see Tyreek down the field. And again, you can do that against Tyreek and Mahomes if you get to the quarterback. Tampa Bay won a Super Bowl with Sean Murphy-Bunting starting at corner. Why? Because Shaq Barrett, JPP, Vita Vea, those guys, and Ndamukong Suh, they got to the quarterback on every play. So I'm not saying, again, I don't want to be Debbie Downer on L'Jarius Sneed because, again, he's a great player. And I think that it is going to hurt the Kansas City Chiefs that he's not there. But did you notice who Kansas City decided to pay? They didn't pay Sneed. No, they paid Chris Jones. They paid the guy who in the big games always gets to the quarterback. The best defense the Titans have ever had, because Titan fans on Saturday were, this is the best secondary we've ever had, isn't it? And I don't know the answer to that. I could argue that Samari Rolle and Andre Dyson and Lance Schulters and Tank Williams, I could argue that group was up there. I really think that what the L'Jarius Sneed edition reminds me of is when the Titans signed Malcolm Butler, and then it was like Butler, Logan Ryan, Adoree Jackson, and how excited people were for that. But again, like as great as all that sounds, what really transforms the defense, what has made the Titans, when they've had the best defenses in the NFL, it's been Javon Kearse and Kevin Carter and Albert Hainsworth and those type players up front. Kyle Vanden Bosch. So, look, I'm not poo-pooing L'Jarius Sneed. And you had to get corners because, again, you can't put Trey Avery back out on the field. Trey Avery is so bad, no disrespect to him. Trey Avery is so bad that I'm not sure if you had Javon Kearse, Albert Hainsworth, Jeffrey Simmons, and Lawrence Taylor together, that they still wouldn't just throw the ball in the direction of Trey Avery before they snapped it, just throw it over there just to complete a pass. So you have to do better. But nobody wins the Super Bowl, in my opinion, the best defenses are not about their corners. They're about the guys who get to the quarterback. And right now, the Titans have a great player in Simmons, a good player in Landry, who I think is back, fully returned off the knee injury, which is good. An okay player in Arden Key, and a giant 11.5 sacks from Danico Autry. Consistency, the model of consistency for 3 years in Danico, and that's not there anymore. And so it's great that they went out and got a better corner, but I am concerned about that green dot inside backer and Danico's 11.5 sacks. And so you're not going to convince me otherwise on this. Again, it's a big name, and it should help, but you still got to go out and get after the quarterback. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And Brian Callahan said something today when it came to the defense that actually makes me think that he thinks I'm right about this. I haven't even looked at the text line right now. I can guarantee you, Ian, there is some bitching probably going on in the text line right now.
I'm sure.
And Brian Callahan said something yesterday. Said something today that made me think that I'm right about this. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller, those are my guys. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. This month is Happy's Golden Ticket Sweepstakes at Hiller, and you can enter to win at HillerGoldenTicket.com. All you have to do is enter your email, and you're automatically entered to win. Prizes include a $5,000 Hiller gift card, a $1,000 Hiller gift card, or one of 10 Happy Hiller Club memberships. I'm a member of the Happy Hiller Club. I absolutely love it. You will too. Take advantage of zero-interest financing for 12 months on select new HVAC systems, tankless water heaters, and whole home generators. Do not miss out. Enter to win today at HillerGoldenTicket.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face truck today.
What made L'Jarius Sneed an attractive trade target, and how does he impact your secondary?
Yeah, I'm going to have to ease up on that one until everything's officially done. But there'll be a time and a place to talk about all that. Just excited about the player that he is. But as far as any kind of official commentary, we'll wait till it's all signed and sealed.
That was Brian Callahan earlier today, and I believe the guy who asked the question there was Alex Marvez of SiriusXM NFL Radio. And so we asked Brian Callahan about L'Jarius Sneed. Callahan's like, whoa, can't touch that one. And again, I like L'Jarius Sneed. Now, I'm worried about his knees, but I like L'Jarius Sneed. That being said, I think there's maybe a little bit too much in terms of resources on the back end and not enough on the front end. And again, Danico Autry, we're talking about 11.5 sacks that walked out the door. Brian Callahan was asked about the defense. There's a follow-up question here. He wouldn't say anything about Sneed, so let's talk about defense. And here's what Brian Callahan said that makes me think that I'm right, that they're worried about the front end of this defense.
I think our defense is, we've made pretty substantial efforts to improve it. Obviously, our attention to the corner position. We had some other targets that, especially up front, that we were trying to either bring back or go sign. And just like any free agency, you don't get everybody you're targeting. And so we had some targets that went elsewhere, and that's just the nature of it. But excited about the guys we've added. I think we've added some speed, some aggressiveness to the side of the ball that needs that. I think there's some guys that have some talent. I think Kenneth Murray is a really exciting player to add and see if this scheme fits him and see what he can do in it. And there's still more to add too. We still got plenty of players that we can go pick up here at this point, particularly in the draft process as well.
Okay, he told you right there. We had some targets up front. It didn't work out. We had some targets we wanted to keep up front, and it didn't work out. And in fact, Mike Giardi, who writes for Boston Sports Journal, used to be with NFL Network for forever. Giardi said today that Callahan said at the owners' meetings that the reason they were able to sign Calvin Ridley is because they had money allocated for targets that they were not able to acquire. And once they were not able to acquire those targets, they turned around and gave that money to Calvin Ridley. Ian, I'm starting to think they were interested in Christian Wilkins or Chris Jones.
Yeah, he did say that. I think I saw a video of Paul Kuharsky on his Twitter that said that. And it does make you wonder who those players could have been.
I mean, if they were saving up money for Ridley, which was $50 million guaranteed, if they were saving up money for Ridley and they ended up not being able to get the target that they were saving up and they turned around and gave it to Ridley, I mean, that is Christian Wilkins, Chris Jones type money we're talking. And he even said in that cut right there, guys we wanted to keep. Who do you think they wanted to keep? Autry. I think it was two. Autry and Disease were probably the two guys that they wanted to keep. And they couldn't. So when you poo-poo into the text line, which, again, I've only read one text, but I'll go through them right now. But when you poo-poo me saying, like, hey, that's great that they got L'Jarius Sneed and they needed a woozy and everything else, I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to the front end of this defense, they know it's a problem. He just told you it's a problem. And you only have 2 picks in the top 100, so I don't think you necessarily can fix it overnight. And let's not kid ourselves. The other teams on defense, the Texans, I don't even know who their corners are. But I know who their front line is with Will Anderson and Danico and now Daniil Hunter, and I know what they've got up front. Up front matters. So before you get mad at me, just know your coach just said that today. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Let's go to Kyle, who's been waiting patiently and is up next on the program. Thank you for calling on L'Jarius Sneed. What's up, Kyle?
Hey, Jared. I'm skeptically excited about the Sneed signing.
Sure.
But I got questions for you. How extensive of a physical will we bring him in here for? And what's that look like? Are they universal? They're all the same? Are we going to be picking him with a fine-tooth comb? Like, can you just elaborate on that?
So you know what? I'm the wrong person to ask on that, Kyle. Thank you for your call. But I will ask somebody during the break. I'll send a text message during the break to somebody who might know about this. My gut tells me that it is whatever might be wrong before you commit $55 million in guaranteed money to somebody, you want your doctors to thoroughly look through L'Jarius Sneed. Like, you want them to poke and prod. My gut tells me the focus of the physical on Sneed will be the knees. If the Titans, there's 3 things that can happen here. Sneed passes the physical. The Titans end up giving him the $55 million guaranteed. And the Titan doctors basically tell Rand Carthon and Amy Adams Strunk and everybody else, thumbs up. The knees are fine. We don't have anything to worry about, and Sneed's the man. Which that would be the best case scenario here. Because that means that you just got one of the top 3 corners in the NFL, a healthy top 3 corner in the NFL, and you only gave up a third in next year's draft for him. The second thing, which I actually think will end up being the most likely thing, is the doctors will see problems with the knees, and so the Titans will get Sneed to agree to a waiver that everything is guaranteed except for the knees. So if Sneed has a back injury, it's guaranteed. If Sneed has an elbow injury or gets concussed or something, it's guaranteed. But if Sneed has a knee injury that forces the Titans to flunk him on a future physical, then the guaranteed money goes away. And Sneed, if the Titans decide to do that, if the Titans see something in the physical that makes them do that, Sneed almost has no choice but to agree to it. Because if Sneed doesn't agree to it and the Titans aren't willing to follow through with the deal, then Sneed goes back to Kansas City and he's going to have no market. Because nobody is going to want him if he flunked the Titans physical. So the best thing to do would be to accept it. And then the third outcome here would be if Sneed flunks the physical and the Titans are like, no thank you. We're not paying $76 million for what we just saw right here. It doesn't always happen. I mean, it very rarely happens, but it does happen. And the most famous story being the Miami Dolphins doctors saying no on Drew Brees. And Nick Saban's still mad about that. Cody texts in and he goes, "You're definitely looking for something to complain about today, Jared. Tell us the left tackle story, but let's celebrate having a top corner in the NFL." A top corner in the NFL. It's great. It's great. If he's the same top corner he was, and that there's no reason for us to be worried that he's not. But again, the guy went for a third-round draft choice in next year's draft. Like not one other team, not one team that's already good and has a rich owner, not one team picked up the phone and said, we'll give you a second in next year's draft. Because they'll take a second in next year's draft before they'll take a third. Not one team said, we'll give a second in this year's draft. Not even some team that's good, which means that their second-round pick is towards the back. Nobody. That should tell you something. Josh says if Sneed fails the physical altogether and the deal falls through and the Titans are back at square one, is that what happens? If Sneed fails the physical, then the Titans and Chiefs will not finalize the trade. So this is pending a physical, and we have to keep in mind that, see, this is where I do wonder about the timing of all this with the owners' meetings. You know, all the coaches, all the general managers are in Orlando right now, but L'Jarius Sneed's not at the owners' meetings, and I assume that the Titans' doctors are not at the owners' meetings. So he very easily could fly to Nashville and have the physical done, but it also wouldn't surprise me if the Titans want to make sure that they're back here in town when they have a press conference to introduce L'Jarius Sneed. Apparently, Rand told Jim White that they tried to bring Autry and Azeez Al-Shaair back, but it's obvious Houston made a richer offer than the Titans. Another texter said, or he says, I think the Titans are going to left tackle at pick 7, then draft a pass rusher with their second pick, then a receiver later on. Again, that's great. Here's the thing. When it comes to Autry, I asked Rand before the start of the season last year, I asked him, was he having any discussions with pending free agents about extending their contracts before the start of the season? You have to do it before the start of the season. Because if you wait until you get into the middle of the season, these guys, when you come to them with your offers, are all going to say no because they've already played 7 games and there's 10 more to go. And then once they play those 10 more, they get out into free agency and somebody might offer them way more. So no, don't come to me now. If you're going to do it, you have to do it before the start of the season. And Rand said no. And I get it, different coach at the time and everything else, but I asked that question not about Henry or Tannehill. I asked that question with Autry in mind. Because I know Autry is a model of consistency, and he's a leader, and I think he's a pretty good player. And so that does, that right there kind of concerns me a little bit. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back to the Titans. We'll get back into your phones. Again, it's 615-737-1025. By the way, Ian, I think I deserve a little bit of credit.
Okay.
I think I deserve a little bit of credit with zero sourcing. And I think it's a scary thing if you're the Titans, because I'm on to them again. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hey, did your brackets get busted? Well, we have another chance for you to win with the 102.5 The Game 16-team bracket challenge. Go to theGameNashville.com/bracket challenge and fill out your 16-team bracket to compete with great prizes, including tickets to see Kings of Leon at Bridgestone Arena on September 26th. Happy birthday, Jared. That's right. The 102.5 The Game bracket challenge is brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook, Twin Peaks, and Volunteer Hose and Gasket. I don't know anything other than that right there. Now, TD has said that the Titans were in on Sneed at the beginning, but then they got scared away. And, I think PK said that he doesn't think the Titans are in on Sneed. Here's the thing I guess I think I'm starting to realize when it comes to Rand Carthon. If he decides he's going to do something, he's going to find a way to do it. And that may be good, bad, indifferent, whatever. It has nothing to do with my opinion on whether it's a good move or a bad move. It's the move itself that I'm talking about here. And we saw it with Kevin Byard. This time last year, he was trying to get Byard to take a pay cut, and ultimately he did get Byard to take a pay cut, and ultimately he moved Kevin Byard. And when it came to the trade deadline, the reports were, hey, they're probably going to, maybe move on from Derrick Henry. And then all of a sudden it was said that they weren't. And then as soon as free agency came, the Titans moved on just as fast as Derrick moved on. If Rand Carthon gets an idea in his head that, hey, this is what we're going to do, he's going to find a way to get it done. And so when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed, the one team that I have constantly heard as in the mix is the Titans. And it kind of reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins. I told you guys on Thursday. Ian, did I tell you guys on Thursday?
You hinted at it.
I told you, 0 sources. Kyle in Shelbyville texts in and says, Jared, you called it. When Rand makes up his mind, he makes up his mind and he's going to go get the player. Bingo. I kept hearing people say, well, they're not in on Sneed. They were in on Sneed, but then it fell apart, and then the Titans are still on Sneed, and then too much smoke. Too much smoke. There's something there. Rand kind of got his hand caught in the cookie jar on the Byard thing last year, because if he had just cut Kevin Byard outright, the fans would have been furious. Though I am starting to feel like there's nothing that the Titans can do that the fans won't get mad about. They'll only get mad about it after the fact. So like the A.J. Brown trade, they'll get mad about after A.J. plays well in Philly. They won't get mad about it on the front end. Some did, but most of them don't. And I didn't get mad about it, but for different reasons. But again, if they had cut Kevin Byard just straight up, oh my God, people would have been mad about that. So he didn't. He waited, bided his time, and then he got the opportunity at 2-4, and he did it. And that's why they didn't wait till that Atlanta game. Because he wanted to get rid of Byard, and they got rid of Byard. And he wanted L'Jarius Sneed, and they got L'Jarius Sneed. He didn't want Derrick Henry back, so Derrick Henry's not back. For whatever reasons. Again, and these might be good decisions. The Titans might be better off with Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears next year than they would be with Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears. But I've realized, I kind of felt, Ian, like I was losing my spidey sense a little bit when it came to the Titans because of Vrabel. And Vrabel will deny this. He will never, and if he were to be hooked up to a lie detector test, he would pass this. But he'd be wrong. And that is, I know him too well. I know, when Vrabel says something, like when Teresa Walker asks about Will Levis starting that Falcons game, and Vrabel goes, well, I never said Will was starting. And I literally lifted my head up, and I'm like, oh, he's mad. Oh, he's mad. And then we found out that he really was, because I knew him. And I know the Titans. Just like when Diana Rossini came out with that story on Thanksgiving that Mike Vrabel was not going to get fired, that Mike Vrabel was not going to get traded to the Patriots, that Mike Vrabel was not going to any of this. And I'm like, yeah, I don't believe him. And it's like, well, but Diana said, and remember Joe, because everybody knows that Vrabel is, that Diana's in the satchel for Vrabel. And so Joe was defending Diana, to the hills, about how our editors at The Athletic would never, ever, ever let her run with a story if she hadn't talked to the higher-ups of the higher-ups at the Titans. And I didn't doubt that Diana did. That Diana talked to somebody in ownership or somebody who represents ownership, and that they told Diana, oh, we're not firing Mike Vrabel on Thanksgiving. And what did I say on Black Friday? I said, that's great, but the Titans already lied to all of us about Mike Mularkey, so I don't believe him now. So then when everybody else kept saying, oh, Vrabel will be back, Vrabel will be back, Vrabel will be back, I told you guys, I said, I got a feeling. This was the Friday before the last game. I said, I've got a feeling that reminds me of the end of the Mike Mularkey era. I've got a feeling that reminds me of that Friday before the Jacksonville game in 2022 after they fired John Robinson, where I'm like, something is not right. Something is up. And the national people started coming out saying, oh, Vrabel, he might be in some hot water. And the local people weren't really saying much. And I'm like, guys, there's something wrong here. Because I know the Titans. And I knew Vrabel. And I think that's what made Vrabel so mad, is I could listen to Vrabel talk and I knew it was bull crap. And I'd be like, that's bull crap. And now I'm starting to get a read on Rand. I met Brian Callahan one time when I sat down and interviewed him the day after he got hired. I don't know anything about the guy other than that. And so there's no way for me to be able to read the tea leaves on him. I'm still learning him. But I think I've got Rand down pat. Again, once Rand starts once he decides he's going to go do something, and I don't mean decides like, oh, well, we thought, it'd be a good idea to add this guy. And so once he decides like Jerry Jones, I'll want him. He's going to go get that guy. And again, that could be good. That could be bad. If you decide that you're going to do whatever it takes to get some guy who sucks, then that's not good. If you decide that you're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that you get your guy, if your guy ends up being Joe Burrow, great. But I have just decided that when it comes, it's clear Rand wanted to tear this thing down last year. It's clear that he wanted to come in, probably get rid of Tannehill, Henry, and Byard. And so he couldn't on the front end, but boy, did he eventually. And so that's, again, how is zero sourcing. And part of me thinks that the Titans weren't forthcoming, when it came to the whole Sneed thing. Because, again, PK and TD were like, I don't think they're in on Sneed. I'm like, they're just telling people that because they want people to think. They want the Chiefs and Sneed and everybody else. They want them to think like, hey, man, that price is too high. We're not interested in that. And how do you do that? You tell people that. Just like how Kansas City told everybody, oh, we're fine if Sneed has to play on the tag. I.e., if you don't give us what we want, we're not going to make a deal. Just like how L'Jarius Sneed's camp told people he wants to be the highest paid corner in NFL history. And did you notice, by the way, that all of those things were not true? That the Titans were, in fact, in on Sneed, even though the Titans were probably telling people that they weren't in on Sneed? Did you notice that Kansas City was not okay with Sneed playing on the tag? Because if Kansas City was okay with it, Kansas City is a Super Bowl contender, and everybody knows it. You don't get better by getting rid of L'Jarius Sneed and not getting an asset in return for this season that you can put in his spot. And then in Sneed's case, he's not the highest paid corner in the history of the NFL. So everything that was being said publicly last week was the opposite of what actually happened. But that's because I don't care about what's said publicly. I care about who's saying it, where they got it, and why what it was that they got came from who, why they said it. I care about the who said something more than I care about what it is that they said. Because 99% of the time, when something hasn't been decided and somebody says something, the opposite is usually true. And that's how, again, with no sourcing, I told you guys on Thursday, I'm like, I think they're in. And I felt pretty strong about it. And I guarantee you the Titans will say, oh, Jared, he doesn't have a read on us. Uh-huh. Who said on Black Friday, after you told Diana on the record, after you told Diana we're not firing Vrabel, who said, I don't trust him. And I think I got a pretty good read around here. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, John Calipari in Kentucky. We got to get into this. I was off on Friday, and so Cal's going to do his coach's show tonight, but the smoke has not arisen from the Joe Kraft Center in Lexington saying whether or not Cal's going to return as coach. And I think it's very much up in the air, and it has nothing to do with Cal. I'll explain. We'll do it next. Jared Stillman right here, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Speaking of the NCAA tournament, tune into 102.5 and 106.3 The Game this week for NCAA tournament coverage brought to you by Toyota. Ready, set, go get your Toyota today at Toyota.com. Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio. You also can hear him down the dial on ESPN Radio. Matt, thank you so much for your time. And what's fascinating to me is that after this weekend's over, there'll be 16 teams. And probably the team that will get the most attention throughout the course of next week will be the 17th team.
That's correct. And no matter what, this is the ultimate reason this probably needs to end. Kentucky is still, along with Duke and North Carolina, the brand that can do that. And if Cal can't keep that up, Kentucky's got to move on.
That was Matt Jones on with me on SiriusXM this weekend. Let me just say this. It bummed me out Thursday night. I was out Friday, had a little bit of, a little something done. And so I was out Friday, and it bummed me out that I couldn't be on the radio Friday after the Predators had beaten the betting favorites for the Cup final in Florida, and after Oakland had beaten Kentucky. And let me say this, Calipari's got to go. He's got to go. The standard of UK basketball is up here, and they haven't made it to the Sweet 16 since 2019, and that's not acceptable, and he's got to go. And I know the money is $33 million, but I think Kentucky can get their way out of that, which I'll get to in a second. I don't think that's the issue right now. As we wait on a resolution from Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director at Kentucky, as we wait on that resolution of whether or not Cal's going to be kept, I think what they're trying to do at UK is they're trying to decide who the next coach is going to be. So if not Cal, then who? And oftentimes we do this, right? Well, if you fire the coach, who are you going to get that's any better? And 99.9% of the time, I hate when we do this. Because there's always some coordinator somewhere. There's always some other there's going to be somebody who's better than a bad coach. But Calipari, in spite of the fact that they don't win in the postseason anymore, Calipari still wins a lot of regular season games. And so, do I think Kentucky can find a coach who can go out and beat Oakland? Yeah, I do. But is it worth potentially $18 to $22 million straight up to Calipari, plus all the money you have to get for the new coach, plus all the money you have to get for his coaching staff and everything else? So what I think Kentucky's doing is I think they're evaluating right now whether or not, say, Jay Wright would come out of retirement to coach Kentucky. He won't, but that's what they're mulling right now. Would Scott Drew at Baylor, who just signed a new extension, would Scott Drew at Baylor be willing to leave Baylor to go to Kentucky? Because if you're going to fire Calipari, this isn't like firing Billy Gillispie, where you still had to get the hire right, but it's not hard to find a better coach than Billy Gillispie. This John Calipari. Now, as far as the money's concerned, Andy Staples had a great breakdown of this. I thought it was hilarious. He was like, SEC football fans know how all this works, the buyout stuff, as opposed to the basketball fans that we never talk about these outrageous buyouts that you can't pay and everything else. So the number is $33 million. And there are a lot of people that are like, well, Kentucky can't afford to pay $33 million to fire Calipari. And I'm like, I actually think they probably can, because the terms of the buyout are equal installments through 2029. So if Calipari gets fired today, UK has to pay him an equal installment like every month or whatever it is through the length of the contract, which is 2029. That's important because in a lot of these buyouts, to discourage people from firing the coach, what they do is they put in there that if you want to buy the coach out, you have to pay $10 million within the first 30 days. You have to pay $15 million within the first week. You have to, that kind of thing. Kentucky doesn't have that. The second thing is that there are offsets that are included in Calipari's contract. What that means is if Calipari were to leave Kentucky and he were to go coach somewhere else, that would be deducted from what Kentucky owes. Calipari's 65 years old. And so if Calipari were just to tell Kentucky, nope, if you fire me, I'm going to get out of the game and I'm going to sit on my couch and you're going to pay my tush $33 million through 2029, he has every right to do that. But again, these guys wake up in the morning. I remember talking to Coach Shoup about this. when he was in between jobs. And Coach Shoup was like, I know people think like, oh, yeah, we get paid a bunch of money and it's great. I'd love to have $3 million to not work or whatever it is. And Coach Shoup was telling me, he's like, I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning ready to coach. He's like, I need a team. That's what I need players. I want to get. Calipari's no different. These guys, this is what they do. They wake up in the morning, they want to go coach. If Calipari wanted to spend all day on the beach, he'd already be on the beach. He's got enough money. So if you're Calipari and Kentucky decides, hey, man, we want to divorce here. We want to break up with enough's enough. What they're going to do is they're going to offer Calipari a big payout at the beginning. So from $33 million, it's probably more like $18 million up front. And no offsets. Which means Calipari can go get another job, and he can make $6-7 million a year, and UK can't touch that. And then again, on a 6-year deal would probably allow him to be whole at the $33 million. But again, Kentucky's only going to do that if they know who the next guy they're going to hire is. And they have to know when it comes to the next guy they're going to hire, they have to know that the guy's going to take the job. Because what they can't do is they can't fire Calipari and think that they're going to get Scott Drew and then end up with Bryce Drew. You can't do that. By the way, one texter says, why doesn't Louisville's women's coach have to go after they lost to Middle Tennessee in the first round? The texter actually says she lost to Middle Tennessee. It's a he. I don't know, probably because we'd been to 5 straight Elite Eights before that. And if Calipari had gone to 5 straight Elite Eights, I don't think anybody'd be talking about firing him either. But times are different. One texter says, Jared, what do you think about there being more upsets in March nowadays? Are there? All the number 1 seeds are still intact. I think, are all the number 2 seeds still intact, Ian?
I think so.
I think Kentucky's the only good school that lost. So I don't necessarily think there are. One texter says, what if Kentucky fires Cal and Louisville hires Cal? Your thoughts? It's not going to happen. I would say I have it on pretty good authority that Louisville is not interested in hiring John Calipari to be their coach. Ian, without revealing any inside info, will you just tell the people that my authority is probably pretty good on this?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably true.
Okay, so I don't think Louisville will be hiring John Calipari. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Boy, Titans Twitter was ready to throw a parade on Saturday, and they were ready to throw a parade at my expense. What do you think of Rand Carthon now, Jared, after the Titans traded for L'Jarius Sneed? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So, boy, I tell you, the Titans made the move Friday night for L'Jarius Sneed, which I was not surprised by. And on Saturday, I woke up to people that were like, what do you think of Rand Carthon now, Jared? And I was like, oh, God. I was like, oh, great. And so, let me say this. I have 3 thoughts to that because I'm sure a lot of you are wondering. If you guys were all going to tweet me about it, then I'm sure that you'd like to know what I think. So I'm going to tell you what I think when it comes to the Titans and L'Jarius Sneed. And again, the Titans gave up a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft. A 3rd-round pick is not nothing, but a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft is certainly not something. And so you have to give them credit there. And I don't care about the money because I think the salary cap's fake anyways. And so the money is not fake. The cash is real. But, now we can't make these moves. If Amy wants to make the moves, you make the moves. So I have 3 thoughts to the what do you think of Rand Carthon now crew that was just so loud over the weekend. Number 1, I am happy that the Titans went out and got a good player. I'm happy about that. I'm worried about the guy's knees, and I think there's more of a story as to why, again, the asking price was a 2025 3, which is concerning. But again, if they do their homework on the physical and they get a waiver on the knees, then I can accept it. But I'm happy that the Titans went out and got a good player. Because a big bone of contention that I had with the Titans last year was how many bad players they were relying on to be good players, right? Aaron, Brewer, Andre, Dillard, Sean Murphy, Bunting, Chiga, Conquo. It's like all these bad players, the Titans were like, oh no, this is going to be our starting center. Can he snap the ball? Maybe. I know L'Jarius Sneed can cover. So when you're like, you must hate this, hate it. I'm a Titans fan. I like good players. The last thing I want to see is Trey Avery on the football field. No disrespect to Trey Avery. But the last thing I want to see is Trey Avery on the football field on Sundays this fall. So if you're telling me that I can take Trey Avery off the field and I can put L'Jarius Sneed, who might be the best corner in the NFL, on the field, why do you think I would be upset about that? And we always talk about how you don't get better by getting rid of good players. Well, you should get better by adding good players, and that's the hope. Because, again, L'Jarius Sneed is a good player. Now, are his knees an issue? I don't know. Are you paying him too much money? I don't think so. But, again, different discussion for a different day. But as far as is he a good player or not, he's a great player. So I don't have a problem with that. The second thing to the what do you think of Rand now crew is I am stunned by the I lied about that. Stunned's the wrong word. I am disappointed in the lack of skepticism about the asking price for L'Jarius Sneed, right? A 2025 3rd-round pick, that is mind-blowing to me. So 30 other teams did not value L'Jarius Sneed at all. And the team that he was on, that just won the Super Bowl, with him as one of their 4 best players, that is still a contender for the Super Bowl, with him as one of their best 4 players, said, we'd rather take the pick 2 years from now instead of, well, you know what? If you're going to offer us a 2025 pick, we're just going to run it back with L'Jarius Sneed. He's going to play on the tag at $19 million. We're going to stick him out there. We're going to try to win the Super Bowl this year, and then he leaves as a free agent after this year. Congratulations to L'Jarius, and we'll pick up a comp pick for 2026. You're telling me that to Kansas City, the idea of running it back with Sneed wasn't a big enough desire that they took a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft? And you're not sitting there thinking, wait a minute, hold on, something here's not right. Because, again, the money, I'm not worried about the money. Sneed wanted to be the highest paid corner in the history of the NFL. He is not the highest paid corner in the history of the NFL, but he's making a lot of money. And the $50 million guaranteed, we will see when it comes to the knees and the waiver and everything else. But that is a nice chunk of change. That, again, money, you can go get more money. The Denver Broncos are paying Russell Wilson $39 million to not play quarterback for them. You can't just go out and get like a L'Jarius Sneed type player. So if Kansas City is just going to give him up, something's not right. So I'm having a hard time with that. And then the other thing, and boy, people got mad at me for this one. When you say, what do you think of Rand Carthon now, Jared? They still don't have a right tackle. Like, they still don't have a right tackle. And so even though I told you guys I thought Rand Carthon was going to go get L'Jarius Sneed last week, and, you know, people were tweeting me saying, don't get on the bandwagon now, when I said, I think they're going to go get L'Jarius Sneed. I'm like, again, you don't have to worry about me jumping on the bandwagon because they don't have a right tackle. And they also don't have a green dot inside linebacker who calls the defense, and they need a safety too. But hey, they got an elite corner on the used car market for what feels like pennies on the dollar. Great. But that doesn't change how I feel about the Titans. That doesn't change how I feel about the general manager. I mean, I hope he does well. I've said this 100 times, and I stand by it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that Rand Carthon turns in to the greatest general manager. I hope he's Bill Polian, right? 4 Super Bowls in Buffalo, 2 Super Bowls, and a title in Indianapolis. And if Brady wasn't in New England, he would have had a lot, he probably would have had more Super Bowls with Manning. I hope that's the case. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that, when I said at the end of last season, I just saw the dysfunction in the organization, and I said, look at all the money and the high draft choice. Like, let's just blow it up, clean house, move on, start over after what was a disastrous offseason last year for the Titans. I hope I end up regretting that. But I don't regret it now. I do not rescind that opinion. I still have it. And so as great of a player as L'Jarius Sneed is, I'm still skeptical that Kansas City only got a 2025 third-round pick. I mean, there's got to be something here with that. And then I'm also focused in on the fact that the Titans don't have a right tackle. And I had said, so many people blew me up over the weekend when I said, guys, they still don't have a right tackle. And they were like, it's March, Jared. Yes, this is the time of year that you get a right tackle. March, not October. We did that last year. Remember when we all realized that Andre Dillard was no good and Myles Garrett ate him for breakfast, and we're like, what are you going to do about it? And the only option they had was Jalen Duncan. You can't fix that problem in October. You fix it in March. So when I look at the Titans and I see that they don't have a right tackle, I'm like, great. It's great that you're spending $100 million at corner or whatever it is between the 3 guys, and I know McCreary's on a rookie deal. But you don't have a right tackle. And I know that I've beat that story into the ground over and over and over again. But the reason I beat it into the ground is because for the last 3 years, the Titans haven't had a right tackle. Right tackle is important. We've learned that the hard way. If we didn't take the old man at his word, we've learned it the hard way now. And who's going to be playing right tackle this year? It's going to be Nicholas Petit-Frere, probably, a.k.a. PT. Like, that's, seriously. It's a problem. So when you say to me, hey, congratulations, you signed a corner. When you say to me, what do you think now? I'm like, let's ease off on the Broadway parades. Let's figure out right tackle. And then we can start talking about what's next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We got your phones on that. Now, I always think it's stupid when people celebrate like a big acquisition Even though, sometimes if you acquire Joe Burrow or something like that, yes. See, this L'Jarius Sneed edition reminds me of Malcolm Butler when the Titans added him. And they already had Logan Ryan, and they got a young guy in Adoree Jackson. And I thought that group was okay, but it certainly wasn't as great as we probably envisioned it would be. And that's how I feel about this. Now, I think it could be as great as we envisioned it to be, but I'm not ready to sit here and declare the Titans, right tackle proof at this point. But there is somebody who does deserve a lot of credit, and somebody I've challenged and a lot of you have called out. And we'll do that next, and your phone, 615-737-1025, here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
I want to talk about right now the Tennessee Titans. It seems to be a brand new era for this team under their current owner, Amy Adams Strunk, who has empowered The new general manager, Rand Carthon, of course, he's been promoted as executive vice president. He brings in a new head coach, Ryan, and Brian Callahan, who had been the offense coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals, was part of the growth and development of one Joe Burrow. Brian smartly and rightly so brings over one of the best offensive line coaches in the game. His father, Bill Callahan. Right now, you're already saying we're off to a great start. And for them to transition away from a Derrick Henry who's now playing over in Baltimore, to bring over guys like L'Jarius Sneed, who we talked about earlier in the show, signing him to a 4-year, $76 million deal. Earlier in the week, they had already signed Chidobe Awuzie, bringing him from the Bengals also, signed him on a 3-year, $36 million deal. 2 brand-new corners signed in free agency. Lloyd Cushenberry at center, 4-year, $50 million deal. Calvin Ridley, wide receiver, 4-year, $92 million deal. Tony Pollard, are we talking about a complete overhaul? I don't think it's an understatement.
There you go. That was Solly this morning on NFL Network Radio. And I don't disagree with what Solomon's saying about look at the commitment Amy Adams Strunk has put into this team. You know, I always think it's stupid every year at the draft when they show the entire draft room, usually all white guys in suits that are standing there clapping every time they make a draft pick, you know. It's just so embarrassing. Like, it's so embarrassing to see Jerry and his entire family up there, and they're just all Jerry and Mike McCarthy. I don't know why I'm generalizing this for everybody when I say we see all the teams do this. We see most of the teams do this. But we really, really see Jerry and his family do it. It drives me crazy. I'm like, you don't even know if this player is going to be good. What are we doing up there clapping? Like, let's clap when the guy turns into Mahomes. Then we can clap. But they always clap. You draft Caleb Farley. You draft Isaiah Wilson. And so I think all that stuff's crazy. So when people jump on me about Rand Carthon because the Titans signed a bunch of players in free agency, I look at that and I said, well, let's see if these guys can win. You know, I like Lloyd Cushenberry, right? I think that's a good signing. I do. Like, I really like that signing. I like the Ridley signing because, again, he can run and Will Levis can throw it. And so I like these moves, but can they win? Like, I don't know. They still don't have a green dot inside backer. They still haven't replaced Nico Autry's 11.5 sacks. The person who deserves the clapping right now is the owner. It's Amy. Because the Titans are clearly putting their money where their mouth is. And they are paying at top of the market for a center, 2 corners, and a receiver. Clearly, she has decided she's going to let them spend. And I'll be damned if I'm going to pretend like I didn't challenge them to spend all that money, because I did. The day that the NFL announced the cap would be $255.5 million or whatever, I said, look, right now the Titans have a payroll of $110 million. So it's time to go spend the money. I even quoted Tony Soprano, and I said, with all due respect, spend the money. That's our money in that $1.2 billion stadium, right? So I'm not going to pretend like I didn't say that. And I did. I challenged him. And I think a lot of you guys shouldn't pretend that I can't tell you the amount of calls and texts I've had. Oh, our owner's so cheap. And I've never gone that far. And I'm not willing to go that far. But I think this is obvious right now. You can't say all of that stuff when she's clearly willing to write the checks. So I have no idea if these players are going to be any good. I don't. Right? I mean, L'Jarius Sneed, let's go back to his knees. I mean, there's a chance that those knees aren't very good and that it could be David Givens, right? And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. It's just reality. Every first-round draft choice we clap for, and what, 60% of them are busts? So, look, there have been teams that have gone out in free agency, spent a fortune. The Jets and the Browns and these teams for years have spent in free agency and not won because of it. So this is not anything new. But the person who does deserve credit is the owner, who is allowing the Titans to spend at the top of the league. Again, being willing to spend the money does not necessarily equal success, right? Bill Belichick got to spend a bunch of money a couple years ago, and they spent it on Jonnu Smith and Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne and Hunter Henry and Devon Godshaw and all these, not L'Jarius Sneed level players. But you got to give the owner credit when the owner's going to let you spend the money. So way to go, Amy, Kenneth, Barclay, and the rest of the Adams. Way to go, because you guys have spent the money, which as a Titan fan, I was demanding that you did, thinking in my head there was a chance that they weren't. Like, I'm not going to call them cheap because I don't think they're cheap. I thought last offseason was a disaster in terms of how they approached it, but they could have spent their money a little bit more wisely, and so we can blame Vrabel and Rand as much as we want, but the Titans probably could have spent a little bit more money. That being said, this year, Amy spent the money, and you can't deny that. I also think it's funny. I told you guys when I challenged them to spend the money, I said, don't make excuses for them. When we talked about signing Chris Jones and we talked about signing Christian Wilkins and we talked about spending the money, you guys are like, oh, Jared, we can't spend the money on our team this year because we don't know if we're contenders and we don't know if Levis is the guy, so we can't spend all the money and we can't. I don't hear you guys saying that now. And again, I thought Brian Callahan's comments about the defense when he said, I thought Callahan's comments earlier today about Ridley when he said that they had some other targets that they were looking for and they didn't get those targets in free agency, so they had this big pot of money and they turned around and they gave it to Calvin Ridley. And then he told all the reporters at the owners' meetings today again, he said that there were guys up front they were looking at in free agency who they were not able to get. And I'm thinking about the amount of money that it took to get Calvin Ridley. And I'm thinking they were going to bat to try to take a swing at Chris Jones or Christian Wilkins. And again, you can't do that if the owner doesn't okay it. So we got to give Amy, we got to give her due. I mean, we have got to give credit. That's what this show, and I know people complain about it, even though people apparently love it. But I know people complain about it. I always talk about the thirds of the audience. There's the third of the audience that likes me and likes the show. The third of the audience that doesn't like me but likes the show. They're like, oh, it's my show every day. I can't stand Jared, but I love the show. And then there's the other third of the people that hate me and hate the show and think everything that I do is terrible. And those are the people that listen the most. So I know people get mad and they say, oh, you guys are just stirring up controversy and you guys are, trying to spew negativity. And that's not true. We tell it like it is. So when it comes to the Titans and it comes to the owner and the money, something that we've been critical of going into the offseason, that we challenge them to say, hey, you got to spend the money. They've spent it. And I'm not going to pretend like I didn't challenge them to do that. And I am not going to not reward them or not give them the credit that they're due because, again, all I care about is being fair. That's it. So, again, like the L'Jarius Sneed, we'll see. But as far as Amy's concerned, that's the one that I think that we really should be giving the credit to. All right, we're to your phones. 615-737-1025 here on the program. 615-737-1025, which we will do coming up next here on our program. Let's talk. Oh, and one other thing. I hear this all the time, and it's honestly starting to drive me crazy, so I'm going to touch on that too, which we'll get to here on the program. Again, that's 615-737-1025. Let's talk about Window Nation. I love Window Nation. That's right. I trust Window Nation. Why? Because when you replace windows in your home, it is not something that you can just all of a sudden say, hey, let's not think twice about it. I guess some of you can, but most of us can't. You know, most of us, when it comes to fixing our windows, that's a big decision to make. And when it comes to Window Nation, they're only going to give you what you need. They're not going to tell you to do what they think you should do to make their bottom line better. And I know this because they came out to my home and I was looking to replace windows, and they said, your windows are good. You do not need to replace your windows. And that told me that I can trust them, which made me feel comfortable about telling you about them. And March is a critical time to check those windows. If they're cracked or leaking or won't open or stay open, it's time to call the pros at Window Nation. Because right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. Plus, 0 down, 0 interest, and 0 payments for 24 months. Again, that's for every 2 windows you buy, you'll get 2 windows free. 0 down, 0 interest, and no payments for 24 months. With proven quality and service, it's no wonder why thousands trust Window Nation. Do not miss out. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com to schedule that free in-home estimate, where, again, they'll tell you the truth. That's windownation.com.
So what do you make of all the roster turnover and everything you've been able to add?
It's been a good offseason so far. There's a lot left to do, but I think it's been a good start. I thought the free agency period's gone well. We've added some good players, and with a whole draft to go, I feel pretty good about where we have a chance to be come training camp.
Okay, there you go. It's Brian Callahan today at the owners' meetings. And so a lot of you guys, when it comes to the draft, you guys are like, Jared, I know they don't have a right tackle, but they're going to get it in the draft. One texter texts into the text line and says, don't you realize they're going to get their right tackle at pick number 7? To which I would say, right. I am not banging on them for not having a left tackle because I think they're going to get their left tackle at pick number 7. But if we want to get mad about, again, the right tackle story is about right tackle. But, Ian, I would argue it's probably safe to assume that the old man would argue that if you don't have a left tackle,
that's even worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably bad. Like, that's so the one thing that I do, like right now, I cannot get over that they don't have a right tackle, and I cannot just look at this team and say, oh, okay, they're going to fill all these holes in the draft now. Because a lot of you guys said, there's still a draft to go, Jared. And I'm like, you have 2 picks in the top 100. So look, Brian Callahan's not going to get up there and say, Paul, I'm scared to death. We don't have a green dot inside linebacker, so I don't know. But what I'm kind of convinced of, is that I think the Titans are going to have some day one starters that aren't very good. And that scares the death out of me, or scares me to death. And PK had a story, from the owners' meetings with quotes from Brian Callahan, where he was asked about right tackle. And he said, quote, there are some guys who I think played well for us that are young and need development, and it's probably the best way to put it. Between JD, who's Jalen Duncan, and he says NPF, but he really needs to learn that Nicholas Petit Frere's nickname is
PT.
He needs to realize that. Between JD and PT, those guys have some skills. They need some development. They're going to compete. We might end up adding a tackle in the draft. We might end up adding another tackle later. That I like, he said. And apparently, Callahan said what Trevor has said on our show for forever. Callahan has said Dylan Radins is going to play guard. So, or at least I should say he's going to start out at guard, is what Callahan has said. But, I mean, again, where's the right tackle coming from? So if you're the Titans, right now, you're telling me about JD and PT, which he told Caroline and Willie and D-Mace at the Combine. He said, hey, those guys got some talent now. And I was like, oh, no. And I'm telling you, I'm scared to death. As great as it is that you get L'Jarius Sneed, I'm scared to death about PT out there at right tackle. Scared to death of him out there. And maybe you guys just don't. I don't know. Texture says, should the Titans sign a right tackle or draft one? Well, if they're going to draft a left tackle, then they're going to need to sign a right tackle. But I don't think there are any right tackles out there anymore. Jermaine Illuminor's been signed. Jonah Williams, who I didn't even think was very good, he's been signed. Morgan Moses has been traded. Again, one texter says, the draft is still to come, Jared. Yes, and you have 2 picks in the top 100. I view the 2 picks in the top 100 representing your left tackle and your replacement for Danico Autry and his 11.5 sacks. Ian, do you have a problem? If I say to the Titan fans, when you talk about the draft and we talk about the holes that they have, I will give you left tackle and defensive line to replace Autry, but then everything else is still a hole.
Okay, so you still have one more tackle position, inside linebacker, and probably safety?
Yes, and right guard, but it does sound like they're going to let Radins and Brunskill battle it out for right guard.
That would be serviceable. I think I could try to handle that. Only 2. You're only giving me 2 starters?
Well, I only have 2 picks in the top 100. Am I going to sit there and tell you that the Titans are going to take a guy in the 5th round who's going to be Puka Nacua?
Yeah, that's risky.
Right. So I don't think you can bank on drafting a guy to be Puka Nacua.
Or
but
inside backer there. Yeah.
Not a green dot inside backer.
Yeah, even David Long took him a year or 2 before he could do that. He was, a 6th round pick, right? So Amani Hooker was a 4th round pick. It probably took him a year or 2. It'd be probably getting a stretch to find a starter there.
I mean, not to say that you can't do it. I just don't think that we should assume that they can do it.
No, definitely can't assume that. No.
And that's the problem. Like, again, they need a green dot inside backer. I'm going to take a guy out of college. If I'm not taking a guy in the 1st round that can be the green dot backer, I mean, I can't assume that somebody can just jump into the league and do it.
Well, do you want somebody for a 1-year short-term fix for that position?
I wanted Jerome Baker, but apparently that didn't work out, whether it was the medical or too much money or
and
whatever.
Then have to find a new green dot next year?
Well, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I mean, I need a green dot backer for this year. Jeff says, be honest. If they had signed a right tackle, an inside linebacker, and a safety, you'd still say they're doing a poor job this offseason and be whining about how they don't have a number one corner. Well, is that like if they had gone right tackle, inside backer, and safety instead of L'Jarius Sneed or on top of L'Jarius Sneed? And I don't get this. You guys are just I think sometimes you get, again, this goes back to the third of the audience that doesn't like me, or I guess 2/3 of the audience that doesn't like me. It goes back, you guys just want to say, you would still be mad if that had happened. I don't know if I would be mad if that happened or not. How could you know what I would feel? I don't know what I would feel. All I know is what I feel when I feel it, and what I feel is that I felt like it was important enough the day after the coach got hired to tell him the right tackle story to his face, to send the message that go get a right tackle, and here we are talking about Nicholas Petit-Ferrer at right tackle. Now, TD came on Thursday and said that he thinks that, now it looks like Brian Callahan's probably changed, Brian Callahan's decided Raiders is going to play inside, but I thought TD was speaking, my opinion was the same as TD's on Thursday, that they were going to battle it out with Radens and PT at right tackle. And I'm like, that one is, woof. Dustin in Hopkinsville, Kentucky says, I said Amy was cheap. She's not now. Need to get some good players on rookie deals in the draft. In about 3 years, we can reevaluate to see who they kept and let go. But right now, the Titans are looking good. The things you're talking about are Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan issues. It is not Amy Adams Strunk's job to find good players in the draft. It is her job to pay for the players that you sign or draft. So when you're like, hey, I said she was cheap. She's not cheap now. Done. Period. End of story. Their actions proved what some of you believed were wrong. That's exactly the idea of, we need to evaluate and see how. That's the coach and the general manager. The money, are we going to be able to give Calvin Ridley $50 million guaranteed? Are we going to be able to give L'Jarius Sneed $55 million guaranteed? That's the owner. And the owner, I believe, has put her money where her mouth is. Jack says, you claim to believe that you want to see the GM succeed. You do not. It is obvious that you are still bitter because your Patriot way never materialized. I'm going to let you in on a story, Jack, which, by the way, it's funny. Again, Ian, I feel like you know me well enough. We've been doing this together now for 8 years?
Something like that, yeah.
And now we're on top of the city, and still, it is what it is. But do you think I would trade being wrong about Rand Carthon for the Titans to be good?
I think you would just rather the Titans be good.
I mean, there's no way around this. I want the Titans to be good. When you say that I'm bitter that the Patriot way never materialized, I'm going to tell you a story. So about 2 years ago, when Bill Belichick decided to make Matt Patricia the offensive coordinator, I went crazy. I went crazy when Belichick decided to do that because I thought that was all-time stupid. And I felt really bad about it because I went on SiriusXM and I went nuts about Belichick. I mean, I went nuts. And scorched earth. And I texted Sean Reese before I did it, after I did it, I can't remember. And I said, do you think your dad would be upset with me that I'm going on the air and I'm ripping Belichick's ass? And, Sean gave me the whole how could you rip Belichick's ass? He's the greatest coach who ever lived. There's no way you could. But then finally he said, look, man, my dad protected his guys because they were his guys. But I don't think he would tell you anything other than to go do your job. Now, what's funny is when I was ripping the rear end of Belichick, I got told later, in a conversation with one of the bosses at Sirius, that one of the big bosses at Sirius went to one of the other big bosses at Sirius, and that they argued over my Belichick takes, that they pulled the audio, and they were arguing about whether or not, that's not fair, that's not right. And the other guy was like, no, he's right, that's this, that's. And I told the boss at Sirius, I said, guys, that's what I do. Is I have opinions, and some people agree with them and some people disagree with them. And then they argue about them. That's what I do. Did it in Louisville, do it here, and I don't try to do it. I just tell you what I think. So when you're telling me that I don't want to see the Titans general manager succeed because the Patriot way never worked, that doesn't check out with the fact that I've been on Belichick's rear end for the last however many years. I've given up on the Patriot way. I think the Patriot way is dead. I think the Patriot way is Fugazi. I think the only thing that mattered about that thing was Tom Brady. So you can't say I'm mad that the Patriot way doesn't work when I'm the one who said that Patriot way's dead. It's dead. And it's not coming back. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. Let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right, I love FanDuel Sportsbook. They are the best. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the NCAA tournament. Whether you're betting a big upset or the 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's right. Big bets to be had. How about the Vols, by the way? Oh, my goodness. I thought I was going to be sick if they lost that game, and I don't even know why. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, and you can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. 21 and over in President, Tennessee. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit is required. Bonus issue is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
What about the state of your defense? Can you go ahead and give us a little?
Yeah, I think our defense is, we've made pretty substantial efforts to improve it. Obviously, our attention to the corner position. We had some other targets that, especially up front, that we were trying to either bring back or go sign. And just like any free agency, you don't get everybody you're targeting. And so we had some targets that went elsewhere, and that's just the nature of it. But excited about the guys we've added. I think we've added some speed, some aggressiveness to the side of the ball that needs that. I think there's some guys that have some talent. I think Kenneth Murray is a really exciting player to add, and see if this scheme fits him and see what he can do in it. And there's still more to add too. We still got plenty of players that we can go pick up here at this point, particularly in the draft process as well.
Okay, so that was earlier today, Brian Callahan. And I do wonder, based off that, when he's like, we had targets and we had money and they just, they ended up going other places. I do wonder if that means the Titans were preparing to go after Chris Jones or Christian Wilkins. And that would be, if you were to tell me that, hey, the Titans were really lining up for Chris Jones, and if he had hit real free agency and the Chiefs decided they weren't going to pay him and the Titans were going to go top dollar to get him, that would tell me, that would tell me that the Titans are headed in the right direction. Dustin texts into the text line, says, I want Rand to succeed. It is that I feel the same way about him. He hasn't proven anything to me, and I see things realistically, not with mine or others' feelings involved. I still don't trust Rand. It is my right to be skeptical, but if he's successful, I'll be the first to say I was wrong without hesitation. Why would I want my team not to succeed? I just vibe people, and he's not giving me the good feels. That comes from Dustin. Again, like last year, I thought the offseason last year was terrible. And so it's like even that Solomon Wilcots cut we played earlier today. Ian, if you could, on the Solly cut, listen to how he introduces like Rand, and he calls him a new general manager at the beginning. Play the cut.
I want to talk about right now the Tennessee Titans. It seems to be a brand new era for this team under their current owner, Amy Adams Strunk, who has empowered the new general manager, Rand Carthon. Of course, he's been promoted as executive vice president. He brings in a new head coach, Ryan.
Okay, stop. So Solomon right there is just like, at first he says new general manager. Solly, he's not new. Like last year happened. And so I'm still grading against last year. This year it looks on paper much better than last year. And there are moves they're making that they had to make, but again, they still don't have a right tackle. And that bothers me. Gunner says, why would you even give credit to the Bill Callahan hire if you don't think he can coach up some of these players? Here's what I'll say about the Bill Callahan hire. I believe Bill Callahan is going to make players better, but not right away. Because the NFL doesn't allow you to wear pads in the offseason and it's all voluntary until minicamp, and then in training camp you only get so many padded practices and they've taken away a preseason game, I have noticed that seismic changes, offensive coordinators, new systems, new quarterbacks in new places, we really don't know until November of the following season if these things are going to work. It takes time. Remember, Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay, and I believe they were like 5-5 or 7-5 or something like that, and then they ended up after November winning every game in the Super Bowl because it took them some time. So when we're expecting Nicholas Petit-Frere to play right tackle and be good at it in September, I just don't think that's possible because Bill Callahan won't have enough time to be able to get him good. They don't practice enough. There's not enough preseason games. There's not enough real reps. There's not enough banging and thumping, which is what it takes. Where I think the strength of Bill Callahan lies in is that when it comes to deciding who to draft, Bill Callahan is going to be able to say, this guy fits, this guy doesn't. And then I think over time, with all of the practices and all of the games and all of the opportunities to correct, that Bill Callahan will then get guys better next year. So, let's use Skoronski as an example. I think Bill Callahan will have Skoronski by November of this upcoming year, and I don't like that pick. But I bet you if Skoronski's going to be an elite player, which everybody says he's supposed to be, I think that Bill Callahan will have him elite by November. but he won't have him elite in September. And then again, like some of these guys, I don't know. Like I don't know if Nicholas Petit fits with the system that they're. And I don't mean physically, but I mean, in the chest. I don't know if he fits in that. And that's going to be something that Bill Callahan can't fix some of these guys. Skeeter says, I love the show, Jared, but I'm going to trust Brian and Bill, who have decades of coaching to make the best decisions for this team, and thus I'm going to hold off judgment for now. I mean, I think the reason the Titans haven't signed a right tackle is because the right tackle market wasn't very pretty. Now, I liked Illuminor, but that's a different direction. There wasn't a right tackle candidate that was like, yes. Like, there was not a Chidobe Awuzie at right tackle. Solid. You're going to pay him a bunch of money, but he's a ball player on winning teams, and there wasn't that guy out there. One texter says, Jared, just admit you were wrong about Rand Carthon and give the man some credit. You know the horrible extent of what John Robinson left this team in. They didn't have any money to spend last offseason. That's not true. Everyone also knows Vrabel was hard to work with, and I'm sure there were moves Rand wanted last year that Vrabel wasn't in on, coming from Pat. This isn't my gossip to tell. Should I tell it?
Sure.
I'll just say that word on the street is, I can't say this. I really want to. But the person who told me basically told me I couldn't tell. And if I tell, they're going to know that I told. And it may get back to them that they told me. But I really want to tell it. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to tell it. I'll think about it. But when it comes to this John Robinson thing, John Robinson did this, John Robinson did that, John Robinson, well, no, duh. Anytime somebody gets fired, it's because they didn't draft Troy Aikman with every pick. That being said, Robinson won 61% of his games. He inherited the worst team in the league, and they won 61% of their games. So you guys can say Rand's the greatest general manager of all time and everything's all John Robinson's fault. That's fine. But as Bill Parcells used to say, you are what your record says you are. And again, John Robinson, as general manager of the Titans, they never won 7 games in a season like they did last year. You guys can complain. Again, those are opinions that make you feel better about your team. Like that's, and I'm just telling you, when it comes to the Titans, let's see. I'm not saying Rand is terrible. I'm just saying what I saw through year one was not good. And it did not get me excited for the future. Now, I think they're going to be a much better team this year. But that doesn't mean that I'm all in either. And you want me to say yes, yes. Whoa. Here's what one texter said. The difference is you gave John Robinson a pass for signing Julio while on a pontoon boat. Ian, did I give them a pass for Julio Jones?
I don't think so.
In
what way?
I mean, did I not go crazy about Julio Jones? Did I not beg them not to trade for Julio Jones?
I think you were against the Julio trade.
It's not an I think. I mean, I begged them don't sign Julio Jones. And then when they signed Julio Jones, I went crazy. And you all, like you are now, saying, oh, you're not fair, Jared. Rand's the man. You're not fair. You guys were like, I trust John Robinson over you. And I told you guys, 31 years old with a bad hamstring for a second-round pick? What? No. Don't do this to me now. Don't do this to me. Do not be sitting there right now saying, oh, you never criticized. I went crazy, and you guys got mad at me for that. I went crazy when they signed Clowney, and you guys don't be doing that now. Texter. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, how about them Predators? The team that never loses. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live in the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, and we are giving away Predators tickets later this hour. You had to hear the code word earlier in the show, and so you need to know the code word, but we are giving away tickets to tomorrow night's game against the defending Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights tomorrow later this hour. But first, I just want to say one thing that I feel like I've been saying a bunch lately, over and over and over again, and I'm just going to say it one more time. How about them Predators? That's right. This team never loses. I was off on Friday, so I didn't get to talk about the game on Thursday where they went into Florida that is, at the time was the odds-on favorite to win the Cup. They went into Florida with their backup goalie in there and kicked their ass. Then on Saturday, they came back home. They hosted Detroit, a team that had to have the game on Saturday. And even though the Predators didn't play their best, they still won. This team doesn't lose anymore. And all I have to say is a wise man once used to tell us all the time, just get me to the playoffs, baby. And that's how I feel about this team. Because if you're a Predators fan and you're unable to look at this team and see a Stanley Cup contender, then I feel bad for you. Then I can't help you. And chances are, unless you hit the lottery every day, you are just living a miserable existence. If you cannot look at this team and see Stanley Cup contender, then the only way that you'll look at them and think that they can do it is if they do it. And that's not fair. This Preds team does everything. Watching them play every night, it is an honor. What we've seen over the last month and a half, it is an honor to watch what we've seen. They score. They play tough. I mean, they can play a grinding game. They have good offensive skill right now. Forsberg is playing at an elite level, had the game winner the other night. They've got great goaltending. It doesn't matter who's in the net. Both guys are awesome. And they've got Roman Josi, who might be the best player in the world, who's not named Austin Matthews right now. What does this team not have? And the other thing that this team has that I just every night, and even in the playoffs, you don't get this every night. This team shows up to the rink every night ready to go to war. Over this period, which all started with that 9-2 loss to Dallas and Roman Josi and Ryan McDonough after the game saying our season is on the line on Saturday at St. Louis a month ago. Ever since then, they have played, for the most part, like their season is on the line in every game they've played. It's almost like they find a way to motivate themselves, even if it's San Jose. I would argue there's one game on this stretch where I'm like, I take it back, two. Two games. No, I take that back. One game where the Predators didn't have their A game or their fastball, and it was pretty obvious, and that was the overtime loss to Montreal, where they did not meet the standard, and they lost at home in overtime to a bad team. I was going to say Columbus on the road, a game that Kevin Lankinen stole. I was going to say that was another game where they, I didn't feel like they came, but I forgot that I think the Predators started off out shooting Columbus in that game 18-0 or something ridiculous like that. So they did play that way, and they just didn't, they just didn't finish the job, and they had to rely on their goalie to save them. But this team shows up ready to go every night. You want to know why the 2017 team was so successful, in my opinion? It was the fact that they went into that Chicago series, and they knew they had to take one game in Chicago, and they did in game one. Pekka Rinne stole it. And then they went back for game two. And I remember doing the show, and what I love about the playoffs in hockey is that it kind of feels like the football season, except that there's a new football game every other day. Right? It's this big game, everybody's watching, we're doing 4 hours on it every other day. And I remember on the Friday, they won in game one on a Thursday night, and they played game two in Chicago on a Saturday. And on that Friday, I remember saying, you know they're not going to win game 2, right? Like, are we just at the point where, like, we just know they're not going to win game 2 at Chicago? And most people thought, yeah, I mean, you know, all you had to do was go to Chicago and take 1. I mean, you're definitely not going there and going to take 2. I mean, this is the Chicago Blackhawks we're talking about. And then the Predators went in there and beat them 5-0. And so if you've got a 2-0 lead in a series, normally you come home, and we've seen this with the Predators a lot, where they put their feet up on the desk and they take out the Marlboro Lights and they go ahead and spark it and take a smoke, and then all of a sudden they get their rear ends kicked. But they knew they couldn't do that against the Blackhawks because the Blackhawks had Taves and Kane and had put them out a couple years before. And that game 3 was a wild overtime winning game 3 where Philip Forsberg scored a tying goal in the third period, very similar to the third period goal he scored Saturday night. This team knew they couldn't give an inch in that Blackhawks series. After they took the 3-0 lead, I remember watching the press conferences that the Blackhawks were doing over at the Omni Hotel, and their heads were just like, yeah, well, you know, we've got to go out there and, you know, we've got to go out and play our game in game 4, and they were done. Even in that Anaheim series, the Predators took game 1, got a little comfortable game 2, lost that, got back in game 3, it was tied 2-2. And all of a sudden, Mike Fisher and Ryan Johansson are hurt, and now it's like, man, everybody has to batten down the hatches. That team, when they had to have it, they played desperate. Some teams can't turn it on and turn it off like that. The team in 2019 couldn't do that. This team doesn't turn it on and turn it off. This team right now for the last month, they've been on the whole time. That is a cup contender. And it doesn't matter who they play. They battle. It doesn't matter if it's San Jose, Florida, or Detroit, just like last week. And they're not playing up and down to their competition. They beat San Jose 8-2. Why? Because San Jose sucks. They take every game seriously. So if you're somebody who looks at this team and you don't see a Stanley Cup contender, I can't help you because there's nothing else to want to see from your team. The only thing that this team doesn't have that a Colorado has or a Vancouver has or Florida or New York have is that this team wasn't very good in November and December. That's the difference. Other than that, this team has everything that those teams have. Top line scoring, they've got it. Secondary scoring, they've got it. Defense, they've got it. Goaltending and depth, they've got it. If you cannot look at this team and you cannot see cup contender, I can't help you. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So Adam Vinkin did some research when it comes to teams that go on these kind of heaters. And I'll say this. If you don't think this team is a cup contender, maybe Adam can't help you either. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company and your phones, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
this team, as it seems like as the season goes on, they're getting better. What do you think is the key there?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of keys. I think, to me, it really, the group is rallied around each other. We went through a little adversity. We've been able to stay connected through hard times, and we've been able to build our game. And we're starting to trust each other. I think every line's trusting the next line's going to do the right thing, and every D is trusting the forwards are going to do the right thing. So we're building, and tonight was another little bit of step here for us.
Okay, there you go. That was Andrew Burnett after the game against Detroit. So I'm telling you, this is a Cup contender. That does not mean that they are a Cup winner. This is a Cup contender. This team has everything it takes to win the Cup. And if I were any of these other teams, I wouldn't want to play them. So Adam Vingan did this research for NHL Network. And how about this? Since 2008, 2009, 15 years. Over the last 15 years, there have been 9 teams that have gone on 17-game point streaks. Here's how they've finished. 2 teams have won the Cup, according to Adam Vingan's research. Those 2 teams that won the Cup, make sure I get this right, those 2 teams were the Chicago Blackhawks in 2013 and the 2022 Colorado Avalanche. And I covered that Stanley Cup final, and I obviously covered that Avalanche team's domination of the Predators in the first round. Those teams were legit. 2 Cup winners. 2 teams lost the Cup. 2 teams lost in the conference final. And 1 team lost in the second round. 1 team lost in the first round. And the 9th team is the Predators. So again, let's say 8, we take the Predators out of this, 2 of them have won the Cup. So that, according to just this, gives you a 25% chance of winning the Cup based off of teams that have had point streaks of 17 games or longer over the last 15 years. There's another 25% chance that you lose it. So a 50% chance of these teams end up making it to the Cup final. 2 lose in the conference final, and then 1 in the second round, 1 in the first round. So if I can't convince you that I think this team is a Cup final, and that stat can't, or this team is a Cup contender, and those stats can't convince you of that, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'm sorry, this is reality. 615-737-1025 here on our program. And there's only one team that I don't want to play in the playoffs, and it's Edmonton. That's the only team. Other than that, I'm fine with whatever they draw. Ryan is up next. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Ryan?
What's up, Jared? I love everything you said about the team, the way they're playing, but you forgot one more aspect of that annihilation. A coach, a real coach, not a fake coach that they have for the last 4.5 years, a real head coach that has proven that he's a winner in this league and proven that he can get a team to the playoffs and win. And I can't wait to see what he's going to do with this team. O'Reilly tries making these signings. O'Reilly and Shen's leadership qualities have proven more and more valuable over the last 17 games. And O'Reilly had the best quote at the beginning of the season. This team comes together, beautiful things can happen.
Ryan, I don't disagree with anything that you said, and I appreciate your call. And I'm going to tell you, when it comes to Andrew Burnett, that there is a team, the New Jersey Devils, who should be kicking themselves. You know, the Florida Panthers, we can say whatever we want about them. I know you went up there and beat their butts last week, but they did go to the Cup final last year when they made the switch to Paul Maurice, where they let Andrew Burnett go. So right now, that doesn't necessarily look like that was a bad decision, even though I do think that Burnett is a great coach. What I will tell you is this. The New Jersey Devils made a humongous mistake because Andrew Burnett was an assistant coach on their team last year. They made the playoffs. They won a round, and he left, and it hasn't been the same. And this guy is a freaking winner. I mean, he is a winner. He is a great coach. And I know Ryan's been calling for years bitching about John Hynes. And so I think there's a lot of us that feel like, hey, man, this is what we're talking about. When you fired Peter Laviolette and you said, we've got this great young coach coming in here, this is the kind of coach that we think is a great young coach. Not the other coach that you guys tried to tell us was a great young coach and that we were too stupid to see. No. This is a great coach. And I absolutely think Burnett is a huge part of the equation. Gunnar asks, he says, is the coach the difference or the GM or what? I was actually thinking about that this morning. I was thinking about what is it about this team that makes it so special? Now, I want everybody to know this. The run that the Predators are on right now, this doesn't last forever, right? All of these guys, no matter how much success they have, it's like they get hired to get fired. Calipari might get fired at Kentucky, and it's hard to find somebody that was better at basketball for like a 7-year stretch than Calipari was for the first 7 years that he showed up at UK. So these things don't last forever. But I think what happened, I think what's made this team what it is I think the Predators have had a team that is a borderline playoff contender every year for the last however many years. Last year they didn't make it. All the other years they did. But again, they were right on the cut line. Since 2019, they've been right on the cut line every year one way or another. And so that team with Yossi and Forsberg and the goalies, like that team was always going to be right at the cut line one way or another. And I had a belief that when they fired John Hynes and they brought in Andrew Burnett, that would make a 20% difference right there. Just going from a guy that I didn't think was a great coach to a guy who is a good coach. But I think what Barry Trotz did when he got rid of Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene and brought in Ryan O'Reilly was, I believe, that he really flipped up the locker room. Like, he changed the locker room. And I said this when the Predators fired Laviolette. And this was my biggest bone of contention with David Poile and the decision that they made on Laviolette, which was, I didn't think Laviolette was the problem. I thought that they had signed too many guys to contract extensions who had gotten fat and happy, like Ryan Johansson and Ryan Ellis and some of these other guys. And I was like, I think some of these guys have gotten fat and happy, and they're not putting in the effort and the focus and the dedication in order to be successful. And David said, I asked him that day that they fired Laviolette. And David said, hey, man, I'm going to tell you right now. He said, if I find out that that's the case, I'm going to make those changes. But did David really ever tear the room apart? I mean, the closest thing that he did was getting rid of Ellis and Arvidsson a year too late. And even when he did that, they started the next season off really, really well. But this team needed a reboot, and Trotz gave it to him. Because Trotz wasn't tied down to the Duchene signing. He didn't make it. Trotz wasn't going to wait any longer for Ryan Johansson. And it's clear, neither were the Avalanche. So I think the big thing is that Trotz came in and changed the locker room, and they've got a great coach. That's the difference. They got a great coach. They improved by 20% at coach, and Trotz changed the locker room. This isn't the same core. From 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. This isn't the same group, right? Yossi and Forsberg are still there. Sissons is still there. Saros is still there. And that's it. No more Ryan Ellis. No more Matthias Ekholm. No more PK Subban. No more Mike Fisher. No more Victor Arvidsson. No more Kalle Jarnkrok. No more, none of those guys. And I think that's a big Barry Trotz thing that, hey, gonna change this up. Gonna fix this. More of your phone. 615-737-1025. Plus, Joe Rexrode owes me an apology. And we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Speaking of Joe Rexrode and the Robbie and Rexrode program, be sure to tune in tomorrow for Preds Pick to Click, presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. If you pick a player who scores in the game tomorrow night, you will win a pair of tickets to a future Preds game. And that's at 8:45 tomorrow on Robbie and Rexrode. And as far as that all is concerned, Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ, my guy, to get your home seen, heard, and sold. I apologize to you, Joe, because I'm man enough to be able to admit that I was wrong about Oakland after one media timeout last night. All I ask for you to do is the same and admit that you were wrong about John Hynes and I was right, and this is an example of that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not apologizing, but how's your bracket doing?
Joe, why are you not apologizing?
Dude, I can't even, we don't have time to go back and forth on this. You apologize because you go fly off the handle and have to tweet something after 2 seconds of a game. So good for you for apologizing for it, because that's what you do. You overreact to everything.
But you won't apologize for your years of John Hynes defending. So Robbie, I don't want to articulate your own opinion for you, but
okay.
I do feel like you remember vividly, whether it was Joe or Hal or Chris or whoever, you remember the finger wagging and the pointing down to me specifically about the coach. And I do
remember.
And I think going back to that, I think you're on my side on this.
I'm Team Jared. Joe, how do we feel?
Your team, okay, Team Jared on what exactly?
Team Jared on Joe needs to apologize.
Joe, you must apologize.
No, I'm not apologizing.
That was Robbie and Rex Road on Friday. I think Joe owes me an apology. Ian, are you with Robbie? Are you Team Jared?
I'm not Team Jared, no.
Why not?
Apology for what?
I'll tell you this right now. May 5th, 2022, and I do believe, Ian, that May 5th of 2022, I was very hard on John Hynes saying that they needed to fire the coach.
I'd have to go back, but that wouldn't surprise me.
That was when they got eliminated by
Not Carolina?
No.
The bubble?
No, 2022. Colorado. When they got smoked by Colorado, and I was like, guys, I looked at this camera.
They got swept, yeah.
Guys, it is time to fire the GM and fire the coach. And they were like, oh, no. We think we're a Nino Niederreiter away, Jared. Okay. And you're about to get your fourth call there, by the way, Ian. This was May 5th of 2022. Rex Road in the Athletic. Rex Road, John Hynes has been good for the Predators, but the coach deserves a glance as the team heads the wrong way. Now, that would make it sound like Joe's putting it on John Hynes. But instead, it said, quote, John Hynes has been a pleasant surprise in a little more than 2 years as Nashville Predators coach, a guy who inherited a team on a sharp downward trajectory and managed to push things back the other way. So that sounds like he's good. Joe continued. He should be the Predators coach next season no matter what happens in the first round series with the Colorado Avalanche. The Predators should pick up his 1-year option, and he should be judged on the rest of this series, every period, every shift, no matter how long it lasts, which might not be long. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, Joe was telling you, Hynes is good. He should be back. And what have we learned, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? This coach is a great coach. And so when I'm telling you, he's not good. And everyone's, no, Jared, you don't understand the game. You don't understand the game. Maybe. But I knew it was time to move on. And when they hired this guy, I liked him immediately. He's a great coach. So I must know something. And I just want an apology. I said I was wrong when I said they weren't going to beat the Chicago Blackhawks in 2017. And I've said I hope to be wrong about Rand Carthon. But you can't write they got to bring John Hynes back. John Hynes has been a great coach. John Hynes this, John Hynes that. And then when, you are much, 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 much better without him, then you say, oh, no, I'm not apologizing. Team Jared. Way to go, Robbie. Texter says, Jared, do you think the Predators being cup contenders could potentially be a bad thing down the road? Because if this team doesn't make it, they might hold on to pieces that might actually be setting them back because deep down we think they could win and are holding on to some false hope. Let me tell you something, Texter. I'm just going to be completely honest with you just from the jump. It is not bad for you to have a legitimate shot to win the Stanley Cup. It is not a bad thing. There's that old proverb, the well, maybe. The one that's like, oh, it sucks that your leg got broken. Well, maybe. And then war breaks out and you don't have to go to war. And it's like, well, it's a good thing you didn't have to go to war. Well, maybe. Maybe being the worst team in the league and getting that Celebrini kid will be the best thing that ever happens to Whoever lands Celebrini, I don't know. What I do know is this. It is not a bad thing to be ahead of schedule on a rebuild in which in year one, where the general manager came on this program and told you, the fans, he's not talking to me. He's talking to you. And he told you guys, hey, hang with us because this might be a tough year. It is never a bad thing to be going into the month of April thinking you've got a legitimate shot to win the Stanley Cup. It is never a bad thing to win as many games as they've won, points in 17 in a row. That's the difference. Like, it's never a bad thing to be good, right? Like, it's not like, oh, well, the Titans didn't win the Super Bowl when they were the 1 seed in 2021, so that was a bad thing. It was never it's not a bad thing to be good. Well, they didn't have as good of a draft pick, and because they didn't have as good of a draft pick, no. Like, the thing about sports is you only get so many opportunities, and when the opportunity's there, you've got a shot, and that's all anybody can ask for. And this team's got a shot. One texter says, Jared, the fans were not happy about trading Joe Hansen or the Duchesne buyout. They said it was a mistake. Good thing the fans aren't Barry Trotz or you, who has said that Joe Hansen and Duchesne needed to go. I don't think the fans complained about that too much. I don't remember the fans complaining about that too much. Maybe I didn't complain about it. I mean, I know I didn't complain about it, but maybe I'm assuming that my feelings represent yours, and maybe they don't. But I thought the controversial thing was 4 years for Ryan O'Reilly. And a lot of you guys didn't like that. And I'm like, you have to overpay.
Well, it was O'Reilly, Shen, and Nyquist.
Yeah. Oh, I remember Willie
Shen
was...
in particular were like, hey, this is kind of a, older defenseman, right shot. Does he fit? Nyquist, in his 30s. It was, all three of those moves.
So Willie accused me a couple weeks ago of being anti-Gus Nyquist when they acquired him.
I could see it.
Willie was like, you were anti-Gus Nyquist. And I'm going to be honest with you. I have no recollection of whether or not I was pro-Gus Nyquist or anti-Gus Nyquist. I mean, I was pretty high on Barry Trotz at that time, so he probably could have done a lot of things and I wouldn't have been against it. But I don't remember if I was pro or... I figured that they acquired Gus Nyquist to be on the team so that they could turn around and trade him. Like, I thought that they signed him so, hey, we're going to keep this spot warm for Kimmel or Tomasino or one of these young guys, and then when the young guy's ready, he's going to come up, and then at the deadline, we're going to turn around and trade Gus Nyquist. That's what I thought they did to him. And every year, Gus Nyquist gets traded at the deadline almost every year, right? He's like Granlund. He always gets traded at the deadline. This year, he didn't get traded at the deadline because he was on a good team. But that'd net you something in return. I don't remember having a problem with Nyquist. I think the fans did. I didn't. At least I don't think I did. And I didn't know anything about Luke Shen. The only thing that matters to me when it comes to adding a player is, and you know this, Ian.
Have you heard of him?
It's the only thing that matters. And I'd heard of Gus Nyquist. So if I heard of him, I'm usually pretty okay with them, unless I know they stink, like Ryan Hartman. Gino says, Jared's pulling out the receipts, which is a great part of the show. Joe gets so mad every time I do this, by the way. Every time I pull up an old article, which all I did was in the break, I Googled Joe Rexrode, John Hynes, and that article immediately pops up on Google. But every time I do that, I find an old tweet, an old article, or old audio. He's like, that's so weird of you to go back and take the time. And that's his only defense for when he's like, I'm not apologizing for that take I didn't have. And it's like, actually, you did. Actually, you did. Gino says he's Team Jared. Joe should at least apologize to the listeners for being okay with mediocrity, the identity of John Hynes. Kevin from Smyrna says he was happy that Duchesne and Joe Hansen got sent packing. I think most people were happy about that. I mean, I remember when they did it. And I had heard enough scuttlebutt that there was an unhappiness with Duchesne, the guy. There was scuttlebutt there. There was enough talk there that was, whatever. And so when they cut him, I was shocked by it. I remember being like, wow. Because we had given Barry Trotz the nickname Big Swing Barry the day before because he tried to deal all those first-round picks to go up and get that fourth pick. And it's like, hey, man, he says he's taking big swings. And then when he fired Duchesne the way he did, I was like, wow. But I had already heard the scuttlebutt that they didn't think he was a good leader or a, terrifically hard worker or anything like that. But so I went back and listened to the Trotz interview that we had done the day before. This was on Friday, and Thursday at the draft, Trotz came on the show, and I went back and listened to the interview after they had cut Duchesne, and Trotz was basically like, I have to decide who's going to be here. I have to make the hard calls as to who fits here and who doesn't. I was like, got it. So I know I didn't have a problem with it. I don't know, the only person whose opinions I care about at the time of what they were, Joe's. Because I'm sure Joe probably hated it. Who knows. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. It is now time. It is now time for you to win those tickets. I gave you a code word earlier today on the program, and I told you to call it 615-737-1025. So if you're the first person who calls Ian with the code word, you are going to win a pair of tickets to see the Predators tomorrow night against the Las Vegas Golden Knights at Bridgestone Arena at 7 o'clock as they go for points in 18 straight against the defending Cup champions. Good luck on that. Plus, I had all the feels for the Vols on Saturday night. We got to go over that win. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Texas with one last heave coming down 4. Hunter missed it, and that's it. The Tennessee Volunteers are headed back to the Sweet 16.
Proud of the effort. I mean, these are the kind of games in the tournament you get bounced when you shoot as poorly as we did, and but we found a way with our defense.
There you go, Tennessee. I was going crazy on Saturday night between Dusty May spurning Louisville and going with Michigan, which I don't want to get into. And that game, and Ian, I, for the life of me, could not figure out why I was so emotionally invested in Tennessee winning on Saturday night. You can back me up on this. I'm not a Vols fan.
That is correct.
And so it's not like I'm one of these, yeah, baby. I'm not one of those. But I was juggling two sets of feelings here. On one hand, I was juggling the fact that I had said that I think that Tennessee's going to go to the national title game, and I've been saying for weeks that this Tennessee team is different than all the Tennessee teams that have come before it that have let you down. But I've been wrong before, and especially if I'm wrong about the Vols, it's not going to hurt my feelings. The reason why I was so emotionally invested was because I didn't want Rick Barnes to lose again.
And it looked like it was going to happen the same way.
It was going right down Rick Barnes. It looked like a Rick Barnes classic.
Like, these guys just get so tight and they can't shoot.
They just can't shoot. And it was trending that way the whole second half. I was holding on to my tush for dear life because I didn't want Rick Barnes to lose. And then of all the times we've said this guy chokes, this guy can't win the big one, this guy can't, this one would be the one that highlights it the most. And I think he's too good of a man for that. Every dog needs to have its day. And he, just like the puppy I'm about to get, and he needed to have his day on Saturday against Texas. He needs to have his day this year. But it was a good sign that they didn't shoot the ball very well, and they still won. And I said, what makes this team different is they can rebound, and they can play defense with Adu in the paint and Meshack on the ball. And they needed every bit of that on Saturday against Texas. But again, this one was shaping up to be a Rick Barnes pants-pooping clinic on Saturday. This one was like all the other ones, but would hurt more because this team was better than those teams, and this team had Dalton Connect, and this team played hard, and this team played together for all the right reasons, and this team didn't have Admiral Schofield over in the corner pouting like they had in 2019. This is a special team, and a special team does not need to go out in the second round of the NCAA tournament. So I was legitimately thrilled for Rick Barnes that he didn't have to bear the brunt of having failed again in the tournament. And that is quite a change for me because, I usually have been the one every year when you guys are like, no, Jared, this team is different. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, Rick Barnes will fail in March, you watch. But I don't have it in me this year to root against him. I'm rooting for him. That was a good win on Saturday. As much as it looked like it was going to be that Michigan game a couple years again all over, or that Wayne Tinkle game against Oregon State. Like it looked like it was going to be one of those, and it wasn't, so congrats to them. Also, congratulations to John Calipari, who's hosting his coach's show right now, and apparently he says that he's got a meeting with Mitch Barnhart coming up. We do it every year. We haven't, but it'll be done in the next couple of days. Every year we share thoughts with each other. I was on the plane back with him, and he's hurting. I look forward to hearing his thoughts on how we can do better. Apparently, Cal has said that the team needs to get back to their roots. He said that nobody feels worse about it than him. And he says, I love this state and I love this program. And it is not a contest between his love and support for his players and his love and respect for the state. Says he loves every aspect. Calipari's going all in here. I mean, he is going all in. Nick Roush of Kentucky Sports Radio tweets out, Reed Shepherd is voicing over an ad for depression tweetments. Reed Shepherd is voicing over an ad for depression treatments in the middle of the John Calipari radio show. I'm not sure if it's the best or worst placed ad in broadcasting history. Mac Jones just tweeted out, curious, after listening to this Calipari interview, you feel better, worse, or the same? And some people say slightly better. One person says slightly better. Some person says he's back in. A lot of people are apparently saying better. So maybe that's a sign in the right direction. And Vanderbilt has named Mark Binkton the head coach at Vanderbilt. I guess he's James Madison's coach. I don't know anything about him other than James Madison beat the crap out of Wisconsin. And so that would be one more tournament win than Jerry Stackhouse had when he was the coach there. So congratulations to Vanderbilt. But it must have been hard for Vanderbilt to watch Bryce Drew in another NCAA tournament and almost getting to the Sweet 16 yesterday, knowing what they've done since they let him go. But they're on to New Horizon over there at Vanderbilt. And I'm guessing, Ian, that they'll be breaking this down, I would assume, on the Commodore Hour.
It is official, so who knows? Yeah.
Who knows? The Commodore Hour follows us. That's next. Stillman and Company. Everybody, we will see you all live from Bridgestone Arena. Barry Trotz tomorrow at 5 o'clock. We will see everybody tomorrow at 2.